In what other game can you strap a man to an electric chair, get sacrificed in a cult ritual, eliminate a vampire hunter Looney Tunes style, and then throw a rager in the bar that you own before activating a magical artifact that cursed the entire planet? That's right everyone, today we're going to be playing another 100 Days of Graveyard Keeper. This video is a continuation of my previous 100 Days video, so if you haven't checked that out yet, I recommend watching it first. Otherwise, let's get started. Finally, after 6 months away from the game, I woke up part of the way into day 101. The reason being that I'm apparently bad at counting to 100 and played slightly into day 101 during the 100 day video. But before we continue with the day, let's rewind back to the start of day 101 and see what I was working on all those months ago. It looks like the start of day 101 was pretty uneventful. I started the day harvesting and replanting the vineyard, and then going to gather some sticks to go make more plots. To which, go figure, my shovel broke the moment I went to go dig some up, which I then repaired, gathered, and expanded out a single crop plot. Yay, go me? And with my vineyard exponentially larger, I took a trip down to Miller to go buy out his wheat and flour to supplement my beer making and cook meals for Merchant's questline. And then over to Farmer to ask if I could snoop around inside of his house unsupervised for clearly no nefarious reasons. Wait, what? You don't trust me? But if I get a huge carrot, then you'll trust me? Okay, seems legit. And before leaving, I also bought out all of his wheat to help me with brewing more beer. And now, back to the present. When I first started playing, I didn't look over what I had done 6 months ago, but I do remember saying that I wanted to look more into the Better Save Soul DLC, and conveniently, Donkey came by to drop off a body right as I hopped into the game. So I immediately ran that body down to the soul extractor. However, I was unprepared, and despite having the harmed soul, I still need to repair the soul healer to do anything with it. So I put that soul in the soul container, and for the rest of the night I started processing materials for the repairs. I continued preparing materials into the morning of day 102, and while waiting on some glass to smelt, I remembered an issue from 6 months ago. I downsized my carrot farming. This was a problem because I was running out of food for both myself and for carrots to bribe Donkey with. So, I re-expanded my carrot farming back out to 5 plots. My glass was ready by the time I finished tending the farms, so I went back to the healing room and got the soul healer built, prompting a cutscene with Yurik and I not knowing what the hell was happening, and Smiler coming by to set us straight and explain the basics. I brought the harm soul from the soul container over to be healed, getting me a healed soul and a single sin shard. However, once again, I was unprepared, and I needed to repair the soul portal in order to do anything with it. And if you'll notice, I did a stupid. Not thinking about the fact that souls could decay, I put the healed soul in the chest rather than the soul container. I'll notice that here pretty soon. Donkey dropped off another body while I was getting the materials ready to repair the soul portal, which I extracted the soul, and then correctly put it into the soul container this time. Day 103 was the first Sunday since I started playing again, and I hadn't even thought about church and doing the sermons. So, first thing in the morning, I ran out to the apiary to go collect some beeswax to craft some candles. And once it had become late enough in the day, I went to go talk to Dig, the smartest man in the village, about buying some seed oil that I needed for crafting polishing paste in order to repair the soul portal. Afterwards, I continued working on the soul portal materials until it got late enough in the day that I was beginning to worry that I'd miss today's sermon if I put it off any longer. So I switched gears and headed over to the church and performed today's sermon, already forgetting about the candles that I gathered the wax for earlier. Once the sermon was over, I headed back down to the healing room and repaired the soul portal. This prompted another cutscene of Yurik reading from the Keeper's diary, and explaining that the soul portal was used to depart the souls to the land of the dead, in an effort to try to uphold the ancient contract now that the souls were no longer departing on their own. I went to go grab my healed soul from the chest, and quickly realized that I'm an idiot, and the soul had decayed since I didn't store it in the soul container. Well, that's annoying, but I at least had the other harmed soul in the soul container, which I healed and then sent through the soul portal, earning my first 8 points of soul gratitude. Now I want to keep focusing on the soul healing stuff, so on day 104, I took the bodies filling up the morgue outside to burn so I could free up some space to get some new ones. And after burning them, I started getting annoyed at my horrible inventory management situation, so I took a moment to clear it out. The last step of which being selling some burial certificates at the Dead Horse. But when I got there, Horadric had a quest prompt to bring him a gold quality beer to try out. So I poured it back home and picked one up for him. Porridrick loved my beer so much that he believed I'd be perfect for trying to make honey mead, which I could find the recipe for upstairs. Wait, there's an upstairs? Here I am over 100 days in and I didn't even know the dead horse had a second floor. But I appreciated having an outlet to finally burn through some of the honey I had accumulated. I went home to check out the recipe and it can't be made at the zombie brewery, so I'll have to figure out how to make it later. But speaking of alcohol, I haven't checked on any of my businesses yet, plus I have another quest to put beer on the pallets at the Talking Skull. So I teleported over, picked up my profits, and put some beer on the basement pallet to complete Yorick's quest. Another body came in on my way back, which I brought down to the spirit healing room. This time, I decided to upgrade the flesh in the spirit healer before I healed the soul. First, I modified a white skull onto it, and this soul requires red skulls. So I modified another flesh with red skulls, which raised the quality of the healing a little, and then I sent it on its way through the portal, getting another 7 points of soul gratitude. And those 7 points of soul gratitude gave me enough to unlock the next tier of the spiritualism tech tree, specifically remote crafting, which I am very interested in. It also unlocked a questline sending me back and forth between Yorick and Smiler, neither of which gave me any meaningful information, but at least Smiler gave me the blueprint for human soul healing. The day ticked over to 105 as I was heading over to grab the materials to build the human soul healer. Building it added a chair extension onto the side of the spirit healer, and apparently it will also require some sort of special sin shard to perform the healing ritual. The first special sin shard needs to come from somebody with a strong sense of pride, and I have my suspicions on who that could be. But otherwise, functionally, the extension did nothing for me right now. I left it for now, and then went to go check out my farms. This harvest got me some carrots finally, so I got a nice big batch of carrot cutlets cooking to restock on some food, and then took a short nap to restore some energy while they cooked. A new body came in during my nap, which I immediately brought down to the soul extractor. However, it wouldn't let me heal this one, and I'm not sure why. So I just threw it into the soul container for now, and lazily left the body on the examination table. I began looking through different quest objectives that I needed to finish on day 106. Donkey's Revolution quest to make the Jelly of Great Power was one of them, but I only had 3 slime, so I stopped by the dungeon for a moment to go get a little more. That same quest also included black and white paints and a Revolution banner, all 3 things I had the materials on hand to make, so I got all those crafted and turned everything in. I also took the time to look through the tech tree. The DLC Spiritualism tree has a fair amount of good stuff, and more importantly, none of it used any blue tech points. So I picked up the useful equipment, updated equipment, Pray for Souls, Stone Grave Fence, and Marble Grave Fence technologies. And I still have a metric shitload of red and green tech points to spare even after all that. On the morning of day 107, I went to go work on merchant's meals. Never mind, the oven still has carrot cutlets going. I took another look through the tech tree in case I missed anything last night, and I picked up the paper production technology because it didn't take blue tech points, and I was also hoping that crafting the paper might give me blue tech points. I went to the church basement to go build the paper press and... does it not go down here? The hell? How about the cellar? No? Outside in the yard? Okay, yep, there it is. Wasn't expecting it to be out here. I got it built, and it needs paper glop and white paint. Okay, so what does paper glop use? Wheat and a bucket of water. Interesting. Well, if I want to get paper this way, then I'm going to need to increase my wheat farming. I'll shelf this one for now. I switched over to working on processing materials to build some of the other upgrades I picked up, when Donkey showed up to tell me that they were successful in the revolution, but my services to him were apparently not over regardless. But for my efforts up to this point, he rewarded me with a nice pick. Donkey also dropped by a body when he was here, which I brought downstairs to begin healing. I also upgraded my soul healer with a healing from Pride extension while I was down there. The healing from Pride extension adds a new organ slot for skin into the spirit healer, and with this extension, I was able to heal both the new soul and the one that I had stashed away from a couple days ago that I wasn't able to heal. I spent all night into day 108, extracting, healing, and finally departing the souls, getting my soul gratitude up to 21. And then in the morning I went out to the apiary to go collect beeswax. I also grabbed a few berries to make the berry pie for Smiler. Once it had finally gotten a bit later in the day, I headed over to the lighthouse to go buy blue tech points from Astrologer, and it turns out I had unfinished quests I forgot about. The first quest was to let Astrologer know that he was a deadbeat dad. Wait, that's not a quest, that's just mean. Despite my rudeness, he still wanted me to try to find a way to get Miss Charm to forgive him though. I had also earned enough friendship to get both the calculations that I needed to fix the mill for Miller, and to also ask about the remaining parts to open the portal on Witch Hill. Astrologer told me that the necklace that I'd been trying to get for Miss Charm was one of the two pieces, and the other of which was the golden angle, which actually belonged to him, but he had left it in the fort camp. Once all the quest stuff was done, I bought my 2 blue tech point books, and used them in order to unlock the marble quarrying and zombie quarrying 2 technologies, and then I headed home. My farms were ready by the time I got home, which is great timing because I was both out of carrots for Donkey's extortion box, and I still had that quest for Clotho to enlarge my carrot. No, not like that, I mean a literal carrot. Clotho said that she would help me if I set her up on a date with Corey, so it seems that she's also looking for her own enlarged carrot. There was still a little bit of daylight left in the day, so I headed over to the mill to check out what I needed for the repairs. Which, annoyingly, I had everything in my inventory that I needed except for a single wooden plank. Nothing a quick trip home couldn't solve though, and when I came back, I repaired the mill, and informed both Miller and Farmer, the latter of which gave me the papers to give Alicia permission to attend the concert with Miss Charm. I was still getting reoriented with the game in my previous progress on day 109, finally remembering that my vineyard was not completely automated. So I finally went to harvest and replant them. And speaking of the vineyard, my wine cellar was completely overstocked on grapes from screwing up the zombie winery in the first 100 days, so now all the chests are full and are blocking all crafting of more wine and beer. Once I had that issue addressed, I went over to the church basement to go craft some candles for today's sermon to get more faith, because I really want to get a lot more zombie automation going. The candle crafting also got me some blue tech points, exactly enough to get the Art of Stone technology, which I'll need to craft the statues for Bishop's Quest in order to upgrade the church to a cathedral. I went upstairs, performed today's sermon at 92 quality, which got me 16 faith for the week, which was more than enough to get a new zombie. And after the sermon was over, I went back to my house and saw that my carrot cutlets had completely finished cooking, so I took a moment to check out the different recipes that I could use for Merchant's full course meal quest, and then get started on berry pie for Smiler. I was still in the mood to knock out more quests after that, so I went to go check out the materials that I would need for Snake's Dark Ritual. Skull seems to be the big ticket item for decoration, so let's go check out the bodies I have in the morgue. And why the hell does this body not have a skull in it? My berry pie had finished baking on the morning of day 110, and then I started up 3 gold quality grape pies for Merchant's Meals, since conveniently I had the exact amount of pastry flour left from making the berry pie for Smiler. I brought the pie down to Smiler and he told me literally nothing new. He still doesn't know who he is or anything about the previous keeper. The only thing that he could tell me is that since the ancient contract was broken, souls couldn't naturally be cleansed of sin and pass through to the land of the dead. So these machines were made to replicate that process. After which I went to go collect more honey and wax from the apiary. I still haven't figured out how to make honey mead yet, but you can bet that I'll be selling the crap out of it once I figure it out because I have honey for days. While I was out collecting, I realized that Miss Charm was in town today, so I teleported over to the Dead Horse to give her Alicia's papers for the concert. However, the papers need an aristocrat signature, so hopefully her desperate estranged father can help me out with this one. And while I was in the Dead Horse, I also spoke to Hordrick because I happened to notice he had a little quest objective thing to get his advice. But what advice are we talking about? Oh, it's to ask him who seemed the most prideful in the village. Like it wasn't completely obvious that it would be Bishop. I returned to Yurik to tell him that we could get the pride sin from Bishop, to no one's surprise. And he followed up that not only that we would need a prideful person, but we would also need to do something to instigate the sin. So my character came up with the plan to get Wagner to write something poetic about him. Thankfully, Wagner has a history of being fairly easy to bribe with booze, so hopefully this won't be too hard to convince him. And while I was heading up from the morgue, Donkey was waiting for me, probably to harass me about some sort of revolution BS and... Wait, you failed? The rats took over? Oh shit, I'm sorry Donkey. I would almost feel bad if you weren't a complete jackass the first 100 days of the playthrough. Get it? Jackass. Finally, just before the morning, I also took a trip up to the quarry, built a zombie marble quarry, and moved my stone quarrying zombie over to the newly built marble quarry. When I got home from the quarry on the morning of day 111, my grape pies had finally finished crafting. And with the burgers I had left over from the witch burnings, that makes 2 of the 3 dishes that I needed for merchant's meals. I went to go check out what would be an easy third food to finish up the meals, and soup seems like an easy enough one. So I went outside to go get some carrots from the farm, and while harvesting, I got the achievement for earning over 3,000 green tech points. But I would need to go head over to Farmer to go buy some cabbage for the soup since I stopped growing it myself. First, I stopped off at the Dead Horse to pawn off some burial certificates and... wait a second, I just remembered something from 6 months ago. I can just buy the gold quality onion rings for the third dish. I bought the onion rings and then returned home to go craft the meals, which got me both the Kitchen Boy achievement for cooking 10 different recipes and the Dream Dinner achievement for making a gold quality meal. But I didn't get the meals cooked in time and will have to bring them to Merchant next week. I was processing another body as the day ticked over to 112, and took the time to add another skull modification to the flesh of my spirit healer in order to increase the quality of the healing before I departed it. And while I have been healing every body that Donkey's been dropping off, I've been a little bit lazy about doing anything with the bodies after the fact, and actually let a few decay in the morgue. So I chopped my entire log stockpile into billets, processed about 15 of them into wedges, and then brought the rest down to the burning site to finally take care of the 3 bodies in the morgue. Afterwards, I brought the wedges over to the quarry. The reason for that is that you need the wedges in order to process the large marble rocks from the quarry into regular marble at the stone cutter, and I have a zombie automatically doing that out here. A few large marble stones had made it through to the house before I was able to make it out to the quarry. So I chopped a few more wedges to manually break down the ones that I had gotten here. And I was also surprised to see that breaking down the marble gave blue tech points, but not enough for me to want to manually do it. I started clearing up the left side of the graveyard on the morning of day 113, using the surplus logs to restock on some billets for more corpse burning. And then finally stopped being stubborn and built a second trunk in the cellar due to the first one continually filling up and stopping my zombie winery from crafting. I finally remembered that today is the day that Inquisitor's in town, and I haven't run the snack shack in a while. So I began prepping some flesh to make some more gold quality burgers and hopefully get that running by next week. Then I made a trip to the Dead Horse to ask Wagner about writing the poem to bring out Bishop's Pride. To my surprise, he didn't even need any bribing this time, a first for this game. Another body had arrived by the time I got home, and I need to expand my zombie farming, so I decided to keep this one. I extracted out the blood and fat to get it to 6 white skulls, and then I resurrected it. After which, I built up a new zombie farm, upgraded it, and don't have enough wheat seeds to start planting. God damn it. After doing various chores around the property on the morning of day 114, it was finally late enough for villagers to start coming out of their homes, so I took a trip down to the lighthouse to buy my blue tech points and some writing supplies from Astrologer, and then headed over to Farmer to pick up some wheat seeds so I can get the new zombie farm going. I got the zombie wheat farm started and then harvested the rest of my farms manually, but unfortunately I didn't have the fertilizer left to replant due to upgrading the zombie wheat farm, so I'll need to craft some more. And while I was doing that, I noticed that my gold quality crops were starting to build up, so I took a moment to process some flitch and nails, and then crafted some crop crates for graveyard veggies. Donkey dropped off another new body, which had way too good of a base skull rating to pass up, despite me not having a specific use for him yet, but I still resurrected it. And in the meantime, this zombie can help me out with some crafting around the yard. By the way, I won't be mentioning every single time a body gets dropped off or some of the other various chores such as upkeeping my farms, only when it's important. But keep in mind, these chores are always happening on the side. On day 115, I attempted to bring the poem that Wagner wrote over to Bishop. However, it looks like I need a sin shard in order to do so. I don't know if that's supposed to be the special sin shard that Uruk talked about, or just a normal one. It really wasn't that well explained. In hopes that it was just a normal sin shard, I made a quick trip over to the morgue and grabbed one, and then I returned to Bishop. And it looks like I was correct. You need to bring a normal sin shard with you in order to charge it with a specific sin. So I received the Pride Charge sin shard. And afterwards I performed today's sermon. I didn't bother with candles this time. They're getting way too tedious to make regularly, and I have no immediate need for faith. After the sermon was over, I immediately went down to the healing room to inform Uruk that I had the Pride Sin Shard. and then we went to go perform the cleansing. I don't care if you're nervous, sit the hell down in the sin cleansing chair. For helping out with the first cleansing, Yura gave me the torn out page from the Keeper's Diary, which explained how remote crafting worked. All of that was pretty straightforward already, so I'm not sure why they waited until now for this tutorial tip. It also looks like my map is updated to where now I can click on places that have crafting tables and start the crafting. I started off day 116 by cooking up some more burgers for the upcoming witch burning. And after doing some research into embalming, I went into the tech tree and picked up distillate for the tier 2 distillation cube, which will give me more reagents for the same amount of materials used. And then I also got the Master of Alchemy to produce extra reagents across the board. Unfortunately, that used up most of my blue tech points, so I wasn't able to pick up Embalming Liquids 3. But I can at least start preparing the reagents for those injections while I wait on more blue tech points to come in. I also grabbed the digestion technology, thinking that it would help me unlock whatever workstation brewed mead, which Editing Valid now knows that was a mistake. Finally, I also went back to the spiritualism tree since my soul gratitude was capped out again, and I picked up the experience healer, simplified farming, upgraded equipment 2, stone gravestones, and marble gravestones tech, since none of those required any blue tech points to learn. Plus, I have plenty of red and green tech points to spare. I finally stopped being stubborn and just googled how to make mead, and it turns out I can just make it at the normal brewing station, just can't automate it at the zombie brewery. Annoying, but at least I can make it now. Unfortunately, it only uses 1 honey per brew, and it's manual, so it's not going to be a good method of using up my honey after all. I continued doing various chores around the church basement until I finally thought to myself, am I forgetting something? Oh crap, the aristocrat papers from Miss Charm. I quickly ran outside to buy them from the mailbox and 12 gold? What the hell? That was like the majority of my money. Damn it, I'm temporarily poor again. I poured it over to the dead horse to let Miss Charm know I was an aristocrat now, and she was disappointed that it didn't make me taller or more handsome. Me too, Miss Charm. Me too. However, she then informed me that she would need a brand new original song for the concert. Fortunately, I know the perfect simp for the job. I walked over to Wagner to ask for his help, and he was willing to help me, but he was too nervous. He needed the strongest alcohol that he could get to calm his nerves, which was the infusion of fly agaric, which is an item I've yet to see in the game. I'm assuming I'll need the alcohol distiller for that, so maybe grabbing digestion earlier wasn't a bad investment after all. Before I headed home for the night, I stopped by both Graveyard Veggies HQ and the Talking Skull, and recovered about half of the money I spent on the aristocrat papers, so I was at least feeling a little bit better about that purchase now. I spent a lot of time on the morning of day 117 trying to use up honey in different ways. The first way was making mead, and the second way was by producing the wrong type of fertilizer, since I got excited when I saw I used honey as a reagent. After I realized my mistake and then got annoyed at the time that I wasted, I changed gears and brought the 5 meals I cooked over to Merchant. Turning in the meals gave me the friendship I needed to ask about the final plan for selling Graveyard Veggies to the Royal Council. The head of the Royal Council wasn't a gourmet, so the high quality veggies did nothing for him. But you know what does do something for him? Miss Charm's charms. Although I don't know what you mean there, Merchant, I'm gonna need you to elaborate. Still not getting it. Keep explaining. Aw man, he wouldn't continue elaborating. But yeah, I guess I could get along with Miss Charm, seeing as she just told me that I was her only friend. I bought 15 more silk from Merchant, just in case I need to craft any more tents at the homeless camp, and then I headed back home. A body came in while I was out, and as I headed into the morgue, Jerry congratulated me on becoming an aristocrat, claiming he found out because Yorick had been stalking me. Wait, if Yorick's here, then who the hell is manning the bar then? I extracted the soul from the body, but before I healed it, I remembered I had some extensions left I could craft, plus an upgrade to the extractor. I grabbed all the materials and got the upgrades going, which added blood and fat to the spirit healer. Unfortunately, it was too late for the extractor though. I went over to the workbench to upgrade some organs for the spirit healer as the day ticked over to 118 and... Oh god damn it, is that where the new fertilizer recipes are? I've been looking all over for them. I modified some skin and then healed the soul from yesterday, getting 4 sin shards this time. The body had decayed past 90%, so I couldn't zombify this one. So instead I prepped it to be buried. I need to up my graveyard quality for the cathedral upgrade anyways. I decided to check out these new DLC decorations for this body. These new ones give a ton of quality, but the high-end ones were a little bit more expensive than I could afford or even really use with the current body skull rating. But I did make a DLC stone fence decoration, which is when I discovered these DLC decorations don't give blue tech points, which is extremely disappointing. It makes no sense why they removed that reward on the DLC grave decorations. Donkey did me a solid and dropped off another body, so I was able to test out the upgraded Spirit Extractor. It looks like the upgrade is supposed to lower the amount of damage to the soul, but I got crap RNG on the soul healing skull ratings and didn't have any sin shards to modify more organs, so I healed it as is, getting only 2 sin shards. And afterwards I went to go prep the body to be buried. I brought the body out to the graveyard on the morning of day 119, and then returned to the house to go craft more grave decorations. I crafted a non-DLC headstone to at least get a little bit of blue tech points, and then experimented with another DLC marble fence, which again, got me no blue tech points. I don't think I'll be using these DLC decorations anymore. Afterwards, I grabbed some burgers and beer that I had prepared and headed over to Witch Hill. I got there fully prepared for a nice relaxing afternoon of witch burning, beer, and burgers. You know, just a family-friendly outing. But I got hit with some bad news. The king was possessed and signs of the ancient curse had appeared in the world. So the witch burnings had been put on pause. An inquisitor wanted me to bring him 3 dark organs to prove to the king that the ancient curse was returning. This granted me the ability to both find and extract dark organs from corpses. Since I'd no longer be running the snack shack, I dropped off the burgers and the beer that I had with me at the Talking Skull in order to free up some inventory space, and then I headed home. Another body came in a little bit later as I was gathering water for beer and mead. I took it downstairs to heal, and man, this thing has a horrible skull rating. But that made a lot more sense to me after I took it to the autopsy table and discovered it had my first dark organ inside of it. I gutted the body for everything it was worth on the morning of day 120, and then took it outside to burn, which got me enough skulls to build another skull column over at the Dark Ritual room. Afterwards, I took a trip over to the lighthouse to pick up my 75 blue tech points, which I used to buy the Embalming Liquids 3 and Steel Technologies. I got the steel tech for steel chisels, which I swear I needed for something, but I can't remember for the life of me what it was. For once I had another reason to be here though. Lighthouse Keeper was finally useful for something. I bought 4 quality fish fillets from him, and then ran north to the Gypsy Baron to give him the fish for his quest, which only rewarded me with kebab recipes. What a waste of time. But at least my time wasn't entirely wasted. I'm actually pretty close to Corey's house, so let's head over there and ask him about the date with Clotho. Oh god, it's that crazy shepherd guy. Don't make eye contact and keep moving and hopefully he won't notice us. I brought the date up to Corey, who was initially open to it, until he heard it was with Clotho. Can't blame him though, she is indeed a crazy old hag. Maybe Tress can help out with it though. Shit, did he see me? Walk faster, walk faster! I asked Tress about the date and... Wait, you want me to bribe you for helping your brother find true unconditional love? Damn, I forgot how greedy everyone in this town is. I paid Tress the 10 silver, and he let me know that I should approach the date as a lucrative business deal, and then Corey would probably be willing to meet with Clotho. Crap, did he say something? No habla inglés? Okay? I got back over to Corey and told him that the date was actually a business meeting to get him on board to sell exclusive elixirs, and he changed his tune pretty quickly. You greedy bastard. Now I just gotta let Clotho know that the date is a go. While I was out, another body had shown up, and after doing the usual routine for healing, I was prepping it to be burned when I found my second dark organ. On day 121, I went out to collect, honey I guess? Cause I really didn't get much beeswax. Which means, once again, no candles for today's sermon. But after the sermon, I headed over to the swamp to let Clotho know about the date. She was so happy that she offered to make my carrot larger right there on the spot. Ooh, Clotho, you got me all flustered. But I need to prepare my carrot for you. And by that, I mean I need to go get one, because I completely forgot to bring one with me. I picked one up from the house real quick, and then Clotho got my carrot enlarged. I think she used some sort of spell. It sounded like Viagra or something? I don't know, I couldn't hear her that well. But regardless, I ran my enormous carrot into town to go show off. Farmer tried to one-up me saying his carrot was larger, but in the end, he ended up honoring his deal and let me into his house. Which I proceeded to rob him of everything worthwhile, including the Legionnaire helmet, which I immediately brought to the Talking Skull. I entered the memory of the helmet and it looks like Horadric, Cresbald, and some other people named Jove and Lucius were there. The four were working for the army of the ancient god, but it felt like they were treated more like servants rather than military, and they were pretty sick of it. They wanted to steal the key to the ancient portal from our main man Dig, also revealing that Dig was actually Horadric's adopted father. Horadric was initially against the idea, but Jove used his love for Miss Shane to convince him to agree to the plan. And side note on that, based on the conversations about the memory, I'm also beginning to suspect that Jerry's true identity might be Jove. Jerry then gave me the locations of the next few artifacts, with the next one being the Legionnaire dagger, which Cresbald's currently in possession of. I put the helmet into the artifact cabinet upstairs and then headed home. On the morning of day 122, I went down to the church basement to produce some more fertilizer so I could get another zombie farm going, this time for carrots. But by the time I was done crafting everything, a fair bit of the day had passed and I need to make a trip to the Dead Horse to talk to Miss Charm for Merchant's Quest. I asked her if she'd be willing to advertise graveyard veggies in town, which she agreed to, in return for some jewelry, which I'm not very close to unlocking in the tech tree yet, so this quest might need to be shelved for a little bit. And with that out of the way, I went back home and finally got the zombie carrot farm built and running. Day 123 was a bit of a slower day, just getting caught up on things. I dealt with a crappy body, pre-crafted some flitch and billets to get some red tech points, finally upgraded my anvil to the Anvil 2 upgrade that I got a few days ago, and worked on some alchemy to prepare for embalming. However, a bit later in the day, another body came in, which nobody cares about the body, but it reminded me that I never followed up with Uric after the Pride Sin cleansing treatment. I headed to his room, and he was gone. I found him over at the Dead Horse and brought him back home, where we continued to talk about the next two sins. The first sin was Wrath, and Inquisitor was the obvious choice for this one. However, to instigate the sin, we would need the ashes of a witch. Clotho might be able to help us out with this one because apparently witches keep the ashes of other witches to perform spells. And the other sin was Gluttony, which Merchant would be the perfect candidate for. We discussed the idea of making some sort of special sauce to enhance the flavor of his food, which it also seemed like Clotho would be the one that we would need to talk to for this one as well. So I guess cooking and alchemy are basically the same thing. I won't complain though, that saves me an extra trip from having to go get help from two different villagers. Even though the body that Donkey dropped off yesterday wasn't important, it did give me another skull, which with it, I was able to get 3 more decorations built for the Dark Ritual room on day 124. And since I had basically everything except for the blood fountains built in the Dark Ritual room, I decided to spend the rest of the day getting the materials to build those. Sadly though, I couldn't figure out where the hell I left the seed oil for the polishing paste, so I wasn't able to finish the fountains before Snake left for the day. I finally found my seed oil on day 125 and got the 2 blood fountains built, which got the Dark Ritual room's quality up to, 14? Wait, how the hell am I supposed to get to 20 then? Those were the last 2 decorations in the room. Oh, right. I guess I probably need blood. Getting all the material prepared for the fountains earned me enough red tech points to pick up the carved gravestones and graveyard enhancements technologies. And since I decided I'd be switching back to the non-DLC grave decorations, I went back over to the quarry to switch my marble quarrying zombie back to the stone quarry. In an attempt to raise both my graveyard quality and just because I was trying to grind out some tech points, on day 126 I began crafting some polished stone to make some of the new gravestones I just unlocked. Which, speaking of tech points, Astrologer's back in town today, so I went over to the lighthouse and picked up my weekly 75 blue tech points, which I used to pick up the engineering tech. And after I returned home, I crafted up 10 of the new stone grave fences, and I also got the new water pump built for my house since all the manual water gathering had been getting tedious. Although, I have no idea how this works. Do I need a zombie to pump it? I'll figure that out later. Instead, I headed over to the graveyard to see which graves could benefit from the upgrades. Turns out, I was able to use all 10. A body got dropped off while I was working yesterday, so on day 127 I resurrected it in order to man the water pump. Or not? How the hell does this thing work then? Turns out the water pump just passively stores water in its inventory, which you then click on and it doesn't use energy. Well, that's good to know, I guess, but the zombie I resurrected was kind of a waste. So for now, I just tasked the new zombie with breaking down the old stone grave fence decorations that I swapped out yesterday, and then I'll move him over to making crop crates for graveyard veggies later, until I can find a more permanent location for him. And then I knocked out the sermon before spending the rest of the day doing tedious chores around the property. I spent the entire night into the morning of day 128 crafting a bunch of the new stone fences to work towards the graveyard quality for the cathedral upgrade. Which after replacing everything, I got up to 150 graveyard quality, definitely getting there, but at this rate I'll need to either exhume and upgrade some bodies, or get the other side of the graveyard open to hit that 200 mark. Later on in the day, Donkey dropped off another body that just had too good of a base skull rating to pass up, so I resurrected it, and I'll just find somewhere to put him eventually. On day 129, I prepared the material for and built some upgrades in the morgue. More specifically, I built the embalming table 2, a fridge pallet, and a mortuary rack. And then for the rest of the day, I just worked on crafting alchemy reagents, which sparked the idea that I need to get some zombie automation going down here. Alchemy takes for freaking ever. Not to mention, I do have that one unemployed zombie that I resurrected last night that would be perfect for this. Which on day 130 I grabbed the text for zombie alchemy and preparation 2. I also grabbed the surgery tech so I can stop making surgical mistakes for whenever I get around to upgrading organs. When it got a little later in the day, I headed over to Snake to talk to him about the dark ritual. He let me know that he would need a Damask sword for the ritual, but just telling him that the room decorations were complete got me the friendship that I needed for him to tell me about the 3 portal keys that I needed. Bishop has the mirror, Inquisitor has the eternal coal, which surprised me. I figured it would be Creswald, and Merchant had the fork. I went back over to the church basement after that and built both the zombie alchemy workbench and the zombie decomposer, which I had to destroy my distillation cube and tier 1 alchemy workbench to make the space. There really isn't enough building space down here. I tried to test out the decomposer and, despite just researching silver, I couldn't decompose it. After some testing, it turns out that I need to have crafted the item once for it to appear on the zombie decomposer, so I'll need to rebuild the distillation cube again. Which I did on the morning of day 131, getting the new distillation 2 cube built. And afterwards, I went to go look for Kukul at the mountain fort, but couldn't find him. I'd forgotten from the first 100 days that he doesn't come out until the evening. So instead, I spent my day picking flowers because they look pretty, and I need moths and butterflies for alchemy. And then I took a couple trips over to the refugee camp. The first trip was just to check the materials for getting the garden and a tent built, and then I returned again to actually build the garden. Afterwards, I went home to go study both the flowers and butterflies I collected, and began work on some alchemy. I realized on the morning of day 132 that I haven't gotten a new body in a few days. I went and checked Donkey's bribe box, and sure enough, it was empty. So I put a bit more carrots in. Even with my new carrot farm, my stock is still pretty low, so I really need to get moving on injections and organ upgrades so I can speed that up. I went to the lighthouse to go pick up my 75 blue tech points and decided, screw it, let's buy all 3 types of tech books, because I have fuck you money now. And I used those tech points to unlock related ore, which was primarily so I could work towards getting Scent of Gold to speed up getting gold injections, but I was 7 blue tech points short of getting it. So I'll have to do a bit of crafting first to get those last few tech points. And speaking of my fuck you money, I stopped in at the Talking Skull to get another 4 gold and Graveyard Veggies Warehouse for another 3, getting me back to where I was before buying the aristocrat papers. I was headed into the church early on the morning of day 133, when I got hit with a cutscene of several of my graves getting smited due to Yorick throwing a temper tantrum. He tried to apologize, which I pretended to accept, but really, I was pissed. That asshole just smited my hard work towards getting my graveyard quality up to 200. Dick. Also, why the hell are you even here? You should be maintaining the bar. I'm docking your non-existent pay. Instead of making the repair kits to repair that mess, I grabbed the materials to upgrade the graveyard fence and then also built some stone lawns, which got me back the points that I lost to Yorick's temper tantrum and then some. Before I headed inside to perform the sermon, I talked to Bishop about his mirror. He explained it was important to him because it was the tool that helped him become as great as he is today. But maybe someday he could give it to me. And that day seems like it'll be the day when I reach 100 friendship with him. I did this week's sermon and then headed downstairs to the morgue, where Jerry proceeded to talk crap about Yorick. And listen, Jerry, I agree with you, but you're the last person who should be talking shit. After that, I headed to the church basement and crafted my first injections, which were the silver injections. I immediately grabbed the zombie decomposer to try them out on. On day 134, I finally got the last 7 blue tech points I needed to pick up the scent of gold from crafting the injections. And I crafted some stone repair kits to finish cleaning up the mess from Yorick's tantrum yesterday. I headed up to the refugee camp and got a tent built, and then went to let Teodoro know. For the second time in a row, Teodoro reneged on our deal, and is now telling me to increase the camp population before he'll give me the Witcher's Eye. He's lucky I don't just burn this place to the ground after he's deceived me multiple times now. I decided to go to town to work on other quests after that, starting with Creswald for the Legionary Dagger. Creswald was happy to give it to me, on one condition. Horadric has been too cheerful recently, and he wants me to spoil his mood. But, wait, aren't you two like, best friends though? Screw it. Not my problem. Anyways, he wants me to convince Miss Charm to sing at the Talking Skull, which should sufficiently piss off Horadric. Fortunately, Miss Charm's here today, so I immediately headed over to the Dead Horse. Miss Charm didn't take much to convince. I offered her the job and didn't even try to do the lowball offer for 10 silver. Pissing off Horadric is worth every penny, and I can just get back that 20 silver from selling off all the burial certificates that I've been sitting on. I went back to Creswald to tell him the news, which somehow he already knew that Horadric was fuming over it. How though? It's been like 30 seconds since I talked to Miss Charm. Did he send you a carrier pigeon or something? He gave me the dagger, and then informed me of another identical dagger that was buried somewhere over in the North Forest. I brought the dagger over to the Talking Skull to check out the memory and... What do you mean this is the wrong order? This is the only artifact on your quest log. Could the correct dagger be the one in the North Forest? Well, I'll figure that out later. And instead, I went home and switched out the Decomposer zombie for a carrot farming zombie on the injection table, and brought the Decomposer back to his workstation. There was another zombie waiting in the morgue as well, which will have an amazing skull rating after I remove the blood and fat, so I got to work on getting him ready. I extracted its soul on day 135, and after spending a little bit of time upgrading the healer's organs a bit more, I healed and departed the soul before heading back to the morgue to resurrect the body. And conveniently, the carrot farming zombie was finished with its injection, so I threw my new zombie on the table to get its silver injection and returned the carrot zombie to his farm. I continued upgrading more zombies on day 136, switching my wheat farming zombie onto the injection table, and moving the new one over to the alchemy decomposer, which was currently empty because I'd moved the other one over to the alchemy table to craft some zombie juice. I took a trip over to the homeless camp to check in on the camp happiness, and yeah, still low. I'm just not being patient. But I collected some flowers and butterflies on my way back home. I also stopped at the apiary on the way back to collect some beeswax when I noticed it was getting a bit late in the day. I want to still stop over at Clotho's house to check out the 2 sing quests, so I quickly headed over to the swamp. First I asked about the ashes, which she would give me in exchange for some honey, which was super convenient because I literally just came from the apiary. And then I asked about the sauce for Merchant. She told me to wait and walked inside, and came back out and handed me... nothing? Huh? My quest disappeared, but I didn't receive or unlock anything. I googled it, and the internet told me to check the church basement workbench for it. The recipe was there, and used oil, eggs, and salt. Easy enough, I should have all those ingredients already. Once again, I was working in the morgue in the spirit healing room on day 137, where I took the time to max out the skull rating on blood in my spirit healer. My wheat farming zombie's injection was done, so I went to go swap it out for another zombie from the farms, which... crap, he doesn't have a red skull to use the silver injection on. But I can still work around that. I removed the skull, which adds a red skull to the body, and then started the injection. Afterwards, I headed over to Witch Hill to talk to Inquisitor. I showed him the witch ashes, which was enough to ignite his wrath and give me the Wrath Sin Shard. I also asked about opening up the second half of the graveyard, which only took 20 friendship to do. How did I miss this for so long? I guess I just never read the sign in the graveyard which prompts the dialogue option. I also checked into the dark organ evidence and discovered it has to be one of each unique type of organ, which sucks because the ones I have right now are all duplicates. And finally, I asked about the eternal burning coal, which, if you could have guessed, requires 100 friendship. But with the rest Sin Shard in hand, I returned over to Yurik to find out that I can't progress until I have both of the Sin Shards. So I'll have to wait a few more days for Merchant to come to town. Another new body had come in, which I noticed I can make an amazing zombie if I can just get a single gold injection. After taking out the blood and fat, it was at 7 white and 3 red skulls, so with the combination of the gold and silver injections I can bring it up to 10 white skulls. I got the silver injection started on it, and then immediately headed over to the church basement to begin working on making gold injections. Once the silver injection had finished on day 138, I resurrected the body so it didn't continue to decay while I was getting the gold injection crafted. While waiting on the distillation cube, I also crafted a single set of lye and glue injections, which I had purchased the elixirs for yesterday when I visited Clotho. If I'm already putting all the work into the zombie, I might as well go all out. I got everything crafted, which took for freaking ever, so I had to quickly get over to the lighthouse to buy my weekly tech books. I checked into the tech tree, and it seems like I'm getting to the point where there isn't much left to grab. For today though, I got the final Spirit Healer extensions, Grave Monuments, and Cremation 2. Donkey dropped off another body while I was gone, and while this body wasn't that great, it did help me come to the decision that I'm just going to start using injections to get them decent enough to bury in the graveyard. That way I can get the cathedral upgrade a bit faster. On day 139, I finally went out and unlocked the left side of the graveyard. My new zombie was also finally ready, and after the 4 injections, I had gotten it up to 12 white skulls, which is by far the best zombie I've made to date. I put him on the winery in hopes that he could help make a big dent in the absurd amount of grapes that I've built up, and took the previous zombie over to the injection table. I did this week's sermon, and then decided I needed a break from all the alchemy and zombie stuff, so I headed over to Miller to ask about the ancient lockpicks. Miller told me he couldn't give them to me because they were supposedly evidence of him being robbed of his invitation to perform at the comedy club in town. I guess that checks out, since your life is a joke. But I'll need to find that invitation for him to give me the lockpicks, so I started looking around the property. A few search spots appeared, which I checked around and found Adam's Sudoku note. Man, Adam really has some problems. I also found some moldy food and then some money, which prompted Beekeeper to pop out of nowhere, saying Miller was up to some sinister plan, and found a fishing hook as evidence. Now, Beekeeper's clinically insane, so I sent him on his way, but now I at least have a lead. So I went over to interrogate Lighthouse Keeper about the invitation. On my way over there, I made a stop at the mountain fort to go look for Kukul again. He wasn't out, but I did walk into a cutscene of the Gypsy Baron looking for a dagger. I'll come back to that soon. I got to the lighthouse and immediately accused Lighthouse Keeper of being a thief. Guilty until proven innocent or something like that. He claimed the invitation was rightfully his, since Miller had been stealing his jokes. Which honestly, I didn't care, but in order to get the invitation back, I offered to let him perform at the Talking Skull instead. And yes, I'll get you the drums for your routine. Afterwards, I went back over to the mountain fort to go talk to Woodcutter. He had tried to pull the dagger, but was unable to. Then I went to Corey, who also tried and failed to pull the dagger. And finally I talked to Tress, who was actively cutting up some mushrooms with the dagger. Yep, that's about what I expected from Tress. But I was able to convince him to give me the dagger. After all that was finished, I went back over to check for Kukul, who was finally out, and bought the Damask sword from him for Snake's ritual. On day 140, I decided I wanted to start getting soul receivers set up, but I was down to just 2 conical flasks, which I immediately used to upgrade my soul healer to add the envy and sloth sins. So I went over to the river to go collect more sand, and then started to cook up more glass. I headed down over to the Talking Skull to go check out what I would need for both Miss Charmsong and the comedy events, and then headed downstairs to bring the new dagger to Jerry, who still wouldn't take it. I'm not going crazy, am I? It says on the NPC list to take the dagger to Jerry. Instead, I walked outside and asked Dig about the priest medallion. He was worried that the medallion would spoil, and wanted me to bring him some alcohol to preserve it in. So I immediately picked up the strong alcohol technology to unlock the distiller so I could craft the alcohol. I went home and started crafting some flyers for the events when a new body came in, which was perfect timing to go test out the new upgrades to the healer. Unfortunately, even with a nearly 100% heal, I still only got 4 Sin Shards. But at least the body had a good skull rating, so I resurrected it and got injections started on it. And on day 141, I took the zombie that had finished his injections back up to the quarry to get the marble quarry running again. I returned home and went back to the church basement to finish crafting the 25 flyers that I would need for the 2 events, and then I went over to the Talking Skull to host Miss Charm's song. Once the event was over, Yorick told me that Hordrick would be jealous if I put a zombie greeter at the front door, which is a level of petty that I can appreciate, and conveniently I just resurrected that zombie last night. On my way back home, I stopped over at Graveyard Veggies and used the other 10 flyers I crafted on getting my fame up, since it'll take a bit of time for my reputation to go back up at the Talking Skull before I can host the comedy event. Oh crap, I completely forgot merchants in town today too. I quickly went home to grab the sauce, a sin shard, and one of the vineyard zombies. I haven't put any upgrades into the vineyard zombies yet, so they'll be a good greeter, and I'll just replace it with the one on the injection table once it's done its upgrades. I got back over to Merchant and gave him the sauce, which got me the Gluttony Sin Shard. Afterwards, I asked him how the meals went, which rewarded me with 10 points of friendship, and then I finally asked about the Salty Fork, which he will give me at, you guessed it, 100 friendship. I went back home to continue injections and... wait, when the hell did this new body come in? I brought the body to the healing room, built the final upgrade to the healer, and then went to go speak to Yorick, who proceeded to be an ass. No, Yorick, it wasn't a joke. You're just a dick. But, with the 2 sin shards on hand, we performed the second treatment, and then he went to rest. After I finished the treatment, I went back to healing the soul, which got me 7 sin shards this time. If we can continue getting this many sin shards per heal, I should be able to get the healer organs maxed out in no time, and then we'll be able to use sin shards to start upgrading zombies. While waiting for Snake to arrive on day 142, I finally went and got the soul receivers built in the yard, the morgue, the spirit healing room, and the church basement. And then I headed over to Snake to bring in the Damask sword, who had some followers with him this time. Snake then proceeded to kill me with the Damask sword per some ritual, which I'm pretty sure all my deaths in this game have had something to do with Snake. Rude. After resurrecting, I went back downstairs to speak with Snake again, who had convinced his followers that my immortality was part of his power. Wait, you lying piece of shit. I was already immortal. After his cronies left, I spoke to him again. There was nothing new on the ritual quest, but I did ask him about the booze for Dig, just in case I got too distracted to make it myself before next week. Afterwards, I went down to the morgue to go heal a body that was dropped off during all the Snake quest stuff, which got me the sin shards to max out the skull rating for the intestines in the spirit healer. I decided to bury the body from last night on day 143, which, after I decorated the grave, got my graveyard quality up to 180, getting me pretty close to that 200 quality requirement for the cathedral. I ended up getting the sleepy debuff, so I took a quick nap to clear it and awoke to Snake in my bedroom. His followers ended up being the chatty type, and word of the ritual and my immortality got out, causing a vampire hunter to target the both of us. However, Snake set up a distraction in town to give us some time to set up a trap by Witch Hill. I met Snake above the road to the graveyard and... What do you mean did I bring a plank with me? You never told me to... Oh. Wait, I do actually have one on me. Well, that's convenient. We waited around for a while, which... Snake, what the hell was your distraction? This is taking forever. Oh shit, he's finally coming. We dropped the giant boulder on the Vampire Hunter Looney Tunes style, taking him out with a splat. The Vampire Hunter had a medallion on him which grants me the ability to reach the lower floors of the dungeon, which apparently I didn't have access to. And I also got his corpse to bring back to the graveyard. Snake told me to meet him back at the dungeon, which I'm guessing he won't be there since it's not his day anymore, and yep, he's not here. Because of the Vampire Hunter, the bodies were beginning to stack up in the morgue, so on day 144 I buried 2 of them in the graveyard. But the Vampire Hunter's body had 2 dark organs in it, which after removing them brought it down to a 0 skull rating, so this one will just have to be burned. I got the grave decorations for the 2 that I buried ready and the billets to burn the Vampire Hunter's body, but it began getting late, so I detoured over to the lighthouse to pick up my tech books and unlock the Marble Gravestones tech. Afterwards I returned home, decorated the 2 graves getting me pretty close to that 200 mark, and then burned the Vampire Hunter's body. And Donkey must be working overtime today because he dropped off another body right at the end of the day. Which I used the sin shards from that body to max out the skull ratings on the fat in the spirit healer on day 145. But unfortunately, I couldn't bury the body due to a dark organ messing up the skull rating, so I just had to burn it. I did a bit of chores around the property before performing this week's sermon, and then headed over to the homeless camp to finally get the 7th resident for Teodoro. But Teodoro rudely went to bed as soon as I did that, so I guess I'll just have to come back tomorrow to turn in the quest. I decided to walk back home this time to collect bat wings for some speed potions, which I set on the decomposer when I got home, and then crafted 10 flyers to hopefully perform the comedy show at the Talking Skull soon. I went to go check on Yurik on day 146 and he's gone again. So I went to the Talking Skull where Hordrick told me that he sent Yurik to go talk to Kresvald. I checked in on him and then they both ditched me to go have a drink inside. Rude. So I just went over to the Talking Skull to go check on my reputation. It was just a little bit shy of the 2 stars I needed for the comedy show. I also checked on my inventory to see I was producing way more alcohol than I could sell, so I might need to dial that back a little bit. And after that, I returned over to the refugee camp to go talk to Teodoro, who finally decided he's put me through enough BS and gave me the Witcher's Eye, which at this point, it's been so long I can't even remember what I needed it for. One of the new refugees also wanted to talk. She said she was sad, so I asked her what makes her happy. She likes cooking, and wait, what? I'd try it. But she asked me to build her a new cooking table, which will be pretty easy to build. I just gotta wait for the camp happiness to come back. Another body came in while I was out, and yet again it was pretty crappy. But I really want to get that cathedral upgrade, so I made the decision to start using injections to get skull ratings up on crappy bodies instead of burning them, until I get the 200 quality I need for the cathedral. On day 147, I got the sleepy debuff while carving up some polished stone to upgrade my graveyard fence to stone and for some more grave decorations. I took a nap and woke up to a new person in my home. I really need to get a lock on my door. This happens entirely too often. The intruder was named Lady Beatrice, an inquisitor who was looking for someone to seduce? Kill? I'm honestly not sure. But I think I heard her say something about the refugees, which I denied any knowledge of. She then made my house smell better and teleported away, giving me a new quest objective to speak to the Inquisitor about her. But he isn't in town today, so back to graveyard upgrades. I upgraded the fence to stone, getting my graveyard quality up to 199, and then dug the grave for the body waiting in the morgue, which I buried after his injections were done, breaking the 200 quality threshold that I needed for the cathedral, 207 to be exact. I went back down to Snake on day 148 and collected the booze for Dig, and then asked about the final steps for the ritual. The final piece for the ritual was to get a golden apple from floor 15 of the dungeon, which I could now get to with the Hunter's Medallion. However, I'm incredibly unprepared for the dungeon, so I'll have to prep and come back to that later. So instead, I returned to my best bud Dig, and we performed a little bit of arson to test the quality of the booze. It was good, so he gave me the Ancient Medallion. I popped my head into the Talking Skull to check on my reputation, and it was finally back over too, so I started the comedy... No, I can't call this a comedy show. This is just painful. But it made Lighthouse Keeper happy enough to return Miller's invitation. I brought the invitation back to Miller, who didn't want it anymore. Instead, he wants to perform at the Talking Skull as well. Well, I guess it can't be any worse than Lighthouse Keeper. Fortunately, he gave me the ancient lockpicks up front, so yeah, I'll definitely get back to you on that soon, Miller. Don't call me, I'll call you. But instead of returning to the Talking Skull, I went home to go check on a body that had been dropped off. Inquisitor is in town tomorrow, and I desperately wanted that final Dark Organ, but sadly, the body didn't have it. On day 149, my game glitched out on me. I was trying to work on upgrading the skull rating on a heart for the Spirit Healer, which was both duplicating the unupgraded version of the heart, but then also not giving me my upgraded one. So I wasted a ton of time and quite a bit of sin shards. I cut my losses and then headed over to Inquisitor. I turned in the 2 dark organs I had found so far and then asked about Lady Beatrice. He had pretty much nothing useful to tell me other than he didn't like her. I got home to another new body, which I used the sin shards from healing it to upgrade both a heart and a brain to max skull rating for the Spirit Healer, without glitches this time. Which at this point, I'm getting pretty close to having my Spirit Healer entirely maxed out now. I made my usual trip to Astrologer for my tech books on day 150, and then went to the Talking Skull with all 3 artifacts to go check out the memories. The first artifact was the ancient lockpicks and not the dagger, like the NPC log told me. But the memory itself was a continuation of the previous memory, where the guys had gone through with stealing the key from Dig and were trying to open the portal. However, instead of the portal opening, a man was summoned, going by the name of Master. Master offered to grant them the power to obtain the wishes that they spoke of. The ancient medallion was the next artifact, and Jerry was immediately pissed off when he found out that I traded booze to get it. But the memory brought me to a coliseum where Dig was speaking to the village, trying to convince people to stick to the ways of the ancient god and not the Master's teachings. Master then showed up, and the two had what seemed like a political debate, with the two sides strongly representing modern-day political parties. The final memory was the dagger, which brought me back to Dig attempting to send a body to the land of the dead, but the magic began failing while he did so. Performance issues on the spot. I get it, Dig. Afterwards, Horadric and Kreswald came to speak to Dig about moving forwards with building the new world, but Dig was having none of it and called them out, stating that the ancient god had stopped providing for them as a result of their actions. The aqueducts had run dry, food wasn't being produced, and he even denounced Horadric from being his adopted son. Once I got out of the memory, Jerry let me know that the next two artifacts were the woodcutter's belt buckle and some clay shards from an ancient vase that Adam was currently in possession of. I brought the artifacts to the cabinet upstairs and then went over to the refugee camp. I still have no idea what the Witcher's Eye is for, but the internet told me that Alaric would explain it. But instead of an explanation, I got a prompt about Lady Beatrice warning me that while she seemed decent on the surface, she had something nefarious going on behind the scenes. On the morning of day 151, I started trying to get the 3 marble statues crafted, which is the last requirement for Bishop to upgrade the church to a cathedral. Although, I might have bitten off a little more than I can chew though, seeing as I don't even have the faith for the statues until after I do the sermon today. But I got extremely lucky making the gold quality chisel, which there was only a 70% chance to get, and then I headed over to perform the sermon to get the faith for crafting the statues. The sermon gave me enough faith for 4 attempts at the statues, which have an 80% chance to be gold, and I need 3 of them. The chance is pretty high, but I'm not a lucky person by any means. The first one came out gold, okay. The second, shit, silver. Well, that's not a good sign. Alright, third one, gold again. And the fourth one is gold. Hell yeah. I rushed back over to Bishop and handed over the statues, getting the cathedral upgrade. Which, man, I am very happy about. I really didn't think I was going to be able to get all 3 statues crafted with only 4 attempts. And that's when Bishop dropped that in order to run the cathedral, I would need the aristocrat papers. And also for the inaugural sermon, I would need to invite someone important. More specifically, he wanted me to invite Inquisitor. Fortunately, I already have the aristocrat papers from doing Miss Charm's questline, so no issue there, but I'll have to wait for Inquisitor to come to town to invite him. Hopefully I can also get the Dark Intestine by then as well. I went down to the morgue as it was getting late, and Jerry must have been feeling lonely or something, I don't know. He was having some sort of daydream of us living together as skulls forever. It was pretty cute though. I ignored Jerry and then went to go address the body on day 152 that's definitely rotting at this point. 81% decay. Oops. I was able to still heal it for another sin shard surprisingly, which was just enough to upgrade the last organ in my spirit healer, completely maxing it out. Now I can finally use sin shards for upgrading zombies. I burned the body and then went to go check in on Uric to discuss the final 3 sins. The first of which was sloth, which Uric described as sad, slow-moving people. I was thinking Adam, but the game hit me with astrologer, which definitely makes sense as well. The next sin was lust, which, bitch, what do you mean I'm not seductive? Have you not seen my beard? Fine. I'll discuss it with Miss Charm, I guess. She's in town today anyways, and I don't know, I still think I'm more beautiful though. And finally we discussed envy. Uric wasn't exactly sure what the sin entailed, so he looked at the description in the Keeper's Diary, which was pretty much a spot-on description of Snake. I told him about Snake and Uric recognized him as the man he bought the Keeper's Diary from, so he took it upon himself to make a fake rumor which he knew would piss off Snake. Since Miss Charm's in town today, I grabbed a sin shard and also some jewelry that I got as a reward from Teodora when I got the Witcher's Eye, and headed over to the Dead Horse. First, I gave Miss Charm the jewelry, and she promised to promote graveyard veggies in town, so now I can return to Merchant tomorrow with that news. Then I proposed the dancing lessons with Yurik, which she also agreed to. Yurik showed up right as I proposed it and they began dancing, charging the sin shard I had on me with lust. Afterwards, I went through my NPC log and noticed I had a quest log on my character to take the Witcher's Eye to the waterfall. When I got there, a cutscene began asking me some deep philosophical questions. Why indeed am I thinking of unicorns? The world may never know. Pink orbs started appearing around the waterfall, describing the events of the day that Astrologer and the previous keeper were attacked by the vampires. What started out as two friends hanging out seemed to very quickly become more of a date, until finally, the vampires attacked, and then very quickly got turned into nothing but jawbones, which were conveniently still buried right here. Oh yeah, and more stuff about naked women riding unicorns. Let's just ignore that. Clotho might be able to disenchant the jawbones, so I headed over to the swamp. While on my way over, I found another memory of Inquisitor with a platoon of 33 men dressed in black and orange, headed into the swamp to hunt down Clotho. Inquisitor left the swamp that day with 33 frogs dressed in black and orange. I made it over to Clotho's, but the magic of the jawbones was too strong. However, she informed me that I may be able to still use a memory tincture to check out the memory within the jawbone. But the tincture has some bad side effects. But she gave me both the recipe and a little bit of memory powder to get me started, and told me to come back if I ever needed more. I went home and checked out a body that came in while I was out, and after healing it for another 7 sin shards, I discovered the body had the dark intestines inside of it for Inquisitor. Finally. And afterwards I went to go craft the memory tincture, which I had everything on hand for already, so I got some crafted. Which I then used to pepper spray my eyes with, and nothing besides pain happened. Okay, let's try another. Ow. Okay, still nothing. One more. Ow. Oh, hey, something's happening this time. The jawbones brought me back to the memory of the 4 vampires, all reporting to a robed woman. They were trying to get some sort of information from Master Alaric, but their torture was not working. The robed woman suggests that they turn him into a vampire in order to give him bloodlust as another form of torture to get him to talk. When I got out of the memory, my character prompted me to go speak to Shepard about the Order of the Undead Hunters, which were also mentioned in the memory, and then also to Alaric to speak about the mysterious robed woman. On day 153, I got the alcohol distiller built in the cellar so I could craft the infusion for Wagner. It looks like it should be pretty easy to craft, I just gotta take wine off the porter for a bit to get the alcohol for it. And then I returned to Merchant to let him know that Miss Charm was on board for advertising graveyard veggies. He didn't even respond to the news, and just gave me a random story. Okay then, I guess? I guess I'll just go talk to Adam and Woodcutter then. I went to Adam's first because it was just right around the corner, but I found a memory on my way. It appears Adam was trying to sell some vases to Merchant, who didn't approve of their quality. So Adam got a doll resembling Merchant and stabbed it with a needle. So I guess voodoo is also on the table in this world. And then I actually spoke to Adam, who wouldn't give me the clay shards until I got my tavern quality up to 40. He also implied that there'd be a second requirement, but neglected to tell me what it was. I started heading up to Woodcutter, but stopped at Shepard's house on the way to ask about the memory from the waterfall. He informed me that he remembered a painting which depicted a vampire queen, but otherwise had no useful information for me. And afterwards I finally made it over to Woodcutter's, who did not want to give me the belt buckle. However, Beekeeper stopped over and told me that he would help me get the belt buckle if I helped him find a barrel of honey that he buried. Or else. Well, I guess that's an offer I can't refuse, but I will procrastinate on it for now because my shovel is practically broken. So I decided to go over to the refugee camp to talk to Alaric and Teodoro. When I got there, a man from town confronted me, accusing me of being the man who trashed his shop, punched his clerk, and insulted him. While that wasn't actually me, I do appreciate that man's work. Top quality stuff. Unfortunately, they're running around masquerading as me, which I hope doesn't cause me any problems in the future. I then found Teodoro. He told me his plan to speak to the king on the day of his son's wedding had failed. Beatrice had shown up to the wedding and accused the future princess of being a witch, so she was killed. I also let Teodoro know that Beatrice was looking for him and the rest of the refugees. Due to Teodoro's plan failing, it looks like the refugees won't be going anywhere anytime soon though. so the camp will need even more upgrades to make it a long-term living situation, which gave me more quest objectives for the camp upgrades. I then asked Alaric about the hooded woman. He was unaware that she was the one who ordered the vampires to interrogate and turn him into a vampire. However, there were some implications that it was related to Lady Beatrice. Afterwards, I went to the crafting table to go check out the materials for the camp upgrades, and then I recruited a new refugee since I'll need 8 happiness to build several of the new buildings. I finally started using some sin shards to upgrade my zombies on day 154, maxing out the white skulls on some fat and a brain for my winery zombie, which got him up to 15 white skulls. Although upgrading the organs took way longer than expected, so I had to rush over to Snake to tell him about Urik's rumor, which got the Envy Sin Shard charged. And after speaking to Snake, I went over to the wine cellar to see that enough wine had built up, so I began crafting the infusion for Wagner. I checked back in on the distiller on day 155 and found that the infusion was ready, so I put wine back on the porter. And then I buried a random body that I'd been working on, which filled up the last grave plot in the first half of the graveyard. I then headed out to town, my first stop being Witch Hill to give Inquisitor the final dark organ for him to show the king, and then I asked him about attending the cathedral's grand opening. Inquisitor refused and told me to go get somebody from the royal court. So back to the drawing board for this one. Hopefully this doesn't prevent me from performing sermons though. I then went to the North Forest to look for the honey barrel, finding it next to Tressa's house, and then returned it to Beekeeper, who gave me the honey-coated bandage for Woodcutter's back, which Woodcutter then traded me for the ancient belt buckle. Another body had come in, and I noticed there's an achievement for burying 50 bodies, so I decided to switch to burying every body going forward. I wanted to get a few more questings done on day 156, starting with talking to Jerry about the mysterious vampire queen, although he just made some jokes about Lighthouse Keeper's private affairs. But he at least told me he would speak to some of the local ghosts about it. I then headed over to Astrologer, first buying my weekly books, and then I asked him about his day, which he immediately started venting about several different issues and charging the Sloth Sin Shard. He seemed pretty confused that I was asking about his day though, like he's never had anyone truly care for him before, which left me a little bit sad for a fictional video game character. My next stop was to the Dead Horse to give Wagner the infusion. He loved it and told me he was going to begin writing the song for Miss Charm immediately and to return later. And finally, before I went home, I stopped at the Talking Skull to go check out what I could do for my quality. I thought I had everything built already, but it turns out that I completely missed that I could upgrade the entire tavern, so I noted the materials to do so. I then went home to go let Urik know that I had charged the final 3 sin shards, and we performed the final electrocution. Cleansing. Like usual, afterwards he wanted to rest and asked me to come back later. And thanks to crafting the grave decorations for another body that came in, I got enough blue tech points to pick up the cultist perk, which allows me to see individual organ skull rating, which will make upgrading organs so much less of a pain in the ass. I never ended up getting somebody important to attend the opening of the cathedral, so I was relieved to find out that I could still perform sermons on day 157. And after the sermon, I have 3 NPCs that have asked me to return later to check back in on, the first of which was Jerry, who I asked about the Vampire Queen again. He told me a story of him tormenting some ghosts, and then finally told me about the ghosts on the 8th floor of the dungeon who may have some information about the Vampire Queen. To summon the ghosts, I'll need a special amulet to make him appear, and the amulet needs to be crafted with the hair of a communist donkey. Oddly specific, but I just happen to know one. And then I followed up with Urik about the healing procedure. He said he was feeling better, and pretty soon he was going to leave and do some traveling. So I think I'm finally at the end of this DLC. Awesome. Finally, I went back over to the Dead Horse to meet with Wagner, and never mind, he's gone. He left a note about growing hair in weird places, I'm assuming on his palms, and he told me to meet him at night by the mountain fort. I went back home while waiting on night because I remembered from months ago that I had gotten the materials to build a stained glass window, which I thought was some big upgrade that could only be built once I upgraded to the cathedral. Nope, it's just some tiny little window on the side of the room. Oh well, it still gives church quality points. And once night hit, I teleported back over to the mountain fort, although I couldn't find Wagner anywhere out here. Until it hit day 158, where I was immediately pulled into a cutscene of Wagner hiding behind a bush. where it seemed the infusion I gave him turned him into some sort of a Sasquatch. Wagner was sad and thought Miss Charm would never love him while he looked like this, but he was still proud of the song that he wrote for her. He handed me the song right as some guards were approaching, claiming that Wagner was some monster who was attacking me. Despite me telling them that we were fine, plus Wagner trying to tell them that he was the Lord Commander's son, he was taken into custody by the guards, which sounds like a Wagner problem now, because he already gave me the song. I headed down to the Talking Skull after that, and built the building upgrade. Conveniently, I also had the material on hand to build 2 more tables, which got my tavern up to the 40 quality that I needed for both the achievement and to go back to Adam to get the clay shards. I headed over to the Talking Skull next to give Miss Charm her new song. She loved the song so much that she demanded to know who wrote it. I told her it was Wagner and how he was captured by the guards at the mountain fort. Charm made me promise to help him get him back, so I guess it's no longer a Wagner problem. Damn it. But my character had a great idea. Let's delegate this problem off to Astrologer, and maybe she can forgive him too. 2 birds, 1 stone. Astrologer isn't in town today though, so I headed over to Adam to let him know about the tavern upgrades. He finally let me know the other condition to giving me the clay shards was to figure out who's been sitting outside of his window and whispering insults at him, which gave me a pretty good laugh. At first I assumed it was Creswald, but then he mentioned there being no footsteps, so now I think it's probably Yorick. I have some time before I stake out Adam's house tonight though, so I went up to the homeless camp and got a water pump built. I also meant to get a crock bed built, but I wrote down the wrong number of materials and didn't bring enough peat. That sounds like a problem for future me though, and I still had time to kill before the stakeout tonight, so I decided to throw a rager at my bar, picking up another achievement. And once the party was over, I finally headed over to Adam's house to... Why the hell are you still awake, Adam? Go to bed. I continued waiting into day 159 to find out my suspicions were correct. It was Yorick going through a series of fake compliments that he would turn around into insults. Honestly, I appreciated it, but it seems Adam didn't. Not that I care, but I do need those ancient clay shards, so I sent Yorick off to go harass someone else. I went back home to go look for something to do because I was kind of running out of quest stuff at the moment, and when I stepped outside of the morgue, I found Donkey. I was able to trick him into giving me a lock of his hair, so now I can craft the amulet to speak to the ghosts on the 8th floor of the dungeon. I went back into town to go speak to Merchant to try to figure out what I would need to get to 100 friendship with him, which is when I saw that I can actually invite him to the cathedral opening instead of Inquisitor, so I was able to get the signed invitation from him instead. And then I went back to Adams to let him know that I dealt with Yorick. Wait, you want him back now? No, I held up my side of the deal. Give me the damn shards. Freaking lonely old fool. I returned to the Talking Skull to go check out the artifacts, starting with the ancient belt buckle. The memory showed a large rowdy crowd, and one drunk guy who has no idea what's going on, all waiting to see Master. Eventually, the guards came out to announce that Master was killed by a priestess of the ancient god and had ascended to heaven to become god. Oh, yeah, and Jove is now king, and Lucius is... haunted. Yeah, that's not suspicious at all. 100% believable, guys. And now the newly dubbed King Jove wants to execute those responsible for killing Master. Afterwards, I checked out the memory of the ancient clay shards. It showed the temple that Miss Charm lived in being burned down by a mob, with Lucius claiming that they were able to burn this one down faster than the chapel. The mob continued on, but Horadric had stopped and was having second thoughts about everything, with regrets for the vast amount of people killed and the buildings burned down. Creswell tried to get Horadric to move on and to forget Miss Chain, stating that they pledged their loyalty to Master, but after Creswell left, Horadric heard Dig calling out and turned around to go help him. Once the memory was over, Jerry gave me the location for the next 2 artifacts, the first of which being the Amulet of the Ancient God, which Lighthouse Keeper might have. The other artifact is the Ancient Shackles, which are buried somewhere between the graveyard and the swamp. Afterwards, I went back home to go begin prepping to go further into the dungeon. I picked up the steel weapons tech, and then went to go begin crafting steel armor, which oddly doesn't require steel to craft. I also plan on buying another Damask sword from Kukul later. I also picked up the steel tools tech, mainly because it doesn't require blue tech points, and I needed it to replace my axe from giving it to Woodcutter a while back. After I crafted the armor, I went back over to the refugee camp to build a garden bed, with hopes to make their food situation a little bit more self-sustainable. I got it crafted, but it looks like it functions exactly like a zombie farm, so I'll need to come back later with fertilizer to upgrade it and seeds to plant. And before the end of the day, I went back over to the Talking Skull because I forgot to drop off the last set of artifacts in the cabinet, and then I headed up to Kukul to go buy the Damask sword. I was crafting more grave decorations on the morning of day 160 when I got the sleepy debuff, so I took a short nap to clear it. When I woke up, Horadric and Creswald were in my house. Again. How come everybody feels like it's fine to barge into my house, but then refuse to let me into theirs until I get enough friendship? That's just rude. Regardless, something had happened in the village, and I was needed urgently. We headed over to the Dead Horse where apparently Yurik had gotten piss drunk and went on a rampage, destroying everything in town and then disappeared. So I guess I spoke too soon about being done with the DLC. Since Yurik had disappeared and had no next of kin, the town decided that I was responsible for cleaning up his mess. Fan-fucking-tastic. Horadric had a list of things to get fixed up, the first of which to repair the broken table in the Dead Horse and speak to Creswald about fixing broken stuff on his property. I didn't have the materials to fix the table on me, so I headed over to Creswald to see what he needed. His outhouse door was broken off, so his pooping was in full view of everyone passing by. I noted the materials and headed home. I quickly went to go bury the bodies that I was making the grave decorations for earlier so I could go work on the town repairs and... Damn it, Donkey, chill out on the bodies. I'm getting behind on more important stuff. I got Horadric's table fixed first thing on day 161 and... Damn it, I didn't bring enough nails to fix Creswald's outhouse door though. So I wasted a ton of time going home to get more nails, but I got the door fixed and returned to Horadric for my next set of repairs, which were for the egg seller, Adam, and beekeeper. But I needed to go home and address the body that Donkey dropped off last night and... God damn it, Donkey, stop! Please! You know what? I'm not even gonna bother with this one. I'm just gonna burn it. Later on in the evening, I took a stroll up to the quarry to kill some bats for speed potion materials, and then noted the materials to build the regular marble quarry, since I noticed that there was an achievement for building it. I went back to town to work on repairs on day 162, starting with Adam's pottery wheel, then the egg basket, and finally, one of the 2 beehives. I was a little short on bees for the second, but that's okay. Nothing I can't just throw my wealth at to fix. After fixing the second beehive, I went back up to Horadric for the next set of things to fix. Next, I would need to fix the lantern by Farmer's house, and something happened to Rosa's cow, which, frankly, I'm a little afraid to ask what. But before I work on any of that, I need to go to the lighthouse for a few reasons. The first of which was to ask Lighthouse Keeper about the Amulet of the Ancient God, which he wouldn't give to me because it held sentimental value to him. The amulet marked the day of his freedom, the day he divorced his wife. So I'm gonna have to get Snake to steal it from him instead. I then talked to Astrologer, first to let him know that Miss Charm needed his help to free Wagner. He said he could probably make something work if he could launch an archaeological expedition into the Northern Pass. But he would need to get back in with the university, which he needed some research for, which he hasn't done. Meaning, I need to do it, by writing a silver quality book for him to submit. I then bought my tech books and some writing supplies, and then went back home to check out if I could just get a silver quality book crafted on the spot with the stockpile of supplies I've been hoarding. But my chances weren't looking too good with what I have on hand, so I decided to use my tech points to pick up the Playwright perk. And the perk was exactly what I needed. I managed to get the book crafted and missed Astrologer before he left for the day. God damn it. So instead, I switched gears and went over to the quarry to build the marble quarry and got the marble achievement. I was really excited for day 163 because I can finally hold the ceremony for the cathedral, but I needed to kill some time in the morning, so I started preparing some health potions to get ready to go to the dungeon. I could have easily used my wine surplus instead, since wine restores HP as well, and I have a ton of it already crafted. But there's also an achievement for drinking 50 health potions, so yeah, potions it is. However, I didn't actually have the recipe to craft it, and I already destroyed my tier 1 alchemy workbench, so I had to destroy my hand mixer just to craft the workbench again, just to craft the health potion a single time to unlock it on the zombie alchemy workbench. They really need to give more building spots down here, or just make the church basement bigger in general. But I got the one crafted, and then set as many as I could to craft on the zombie alchemy workbench, and then headed upstairs to talk to Bishop. I showed him both my aristocrat papers and the signed invitation, and the ceremony began. However, it wasn't Inquisitor like he was expecting. Instead, it was his brother, Merchant. Bishop was overcome by emotion at the sight of his brother, and whatever troubles that they had in the past got completely washed away during the ceremony. After it was all over, I was able to get 100 friendship with both of them, getting the Salty Fork from Merchant and the Eternal Mirror from Bishop. Unfortunately, I didn't get any faith for the ceremony this week, but 2 of the 6 portal key pieces is good enough for today. Afterwards, I headed into the dungeon. I don't expect to get too far right now, but just in case, I brought the amulet for the ghost on floor 8 and as many health potions as I could with me and headed inside. I stayed in the dungeon overnight into day 164, clearing the rest of floor 4 and all of floor 5. The upgrades to my gear definitely made a noticeable difference to both my damage and survivability, but I had to head out after floor 5 due to getting the sleepy debuff, which was just wrecking my stamina. Afterwards, I headed out to town, for a second time, conveniently with the exact amount of materials I needed to do the repairs in town, which we can thank a game crash for. At least I saved a little bit of time knowing what materials to bring with me the second time around though. But I made it over to Farmer's and repaired the lamp, and then headed over to Rosa to see what was going on with her cow. She told me it had been painted and it was causing it to be too stressed to be milk, but honestly, I think it looks way better like this though. But regardless, I still cleaned it up. I went back to the Dead Horse to let Hordrick know that all the tasks were done, and he told me that I had finished helping all the villagers, but there was still some minor cleanup to do around town. I'll come back to that later though, because I also brought all the materials with me so I could get the cooking table built at the refugee camp, and brought just enough fertilizer and carrot seeds to get a garden bed planted at the refugee camp. Since I had completely finished Merchant's questline, as far as I'm aware at least, I decided to take the day dungeon diving again. I spent the entire day in the dungeon, and these floors are definitely escalating in difficulty. The achievement for using 50 health potions won't take that long at this rate. I finally made it to the end of floor 8 right as it hit day 166 and summoned the one-legged ghost who has no intentions of helping me. But don't worry, he did at least insult the useless clump of flesh and donkey hair that I brought with me. I offered to help restore his leg in order to help me, but he didn't take my offer seriously. My character decided that I should talk to the only other one-legged person I know and hate, Shepard. Snake was already there when I was on my way out of the dungeon, so I took the time to ask him to steal the amulet of the ancient gods from Lighthouse Keeper. What do you mean you're allergic to fish? Oh, for fuck's sake. Well, it looks like he won't risk it until I reach 90 friendship, so I definitely need to keep pushing to floor 15 to get that golden apple soon. A little bit later, I headed back over to the refugee camp to drop off some food and let the cook know that her table was built. She still somehow managed to complain about getting a free cooking table and asked me to upgrade it. Ungrateful damn aristocrats, I should just let Beatrice know they're here. I ported back over to the Dead Horse to go finish cleaning up town when I was stopped by Woodcutter, offering me a golden apple in exchange for some roof tiles and curtains. I considered the offer, but decided not to bother, because I need to go to floor 15 of the dungeon anyways for the achievement, and besides, if I wanted to opt for the easy route, I would have just bought it off of Clotho for 10 gold with my fuck you money. I left the Dead Horse and found a barrel to repair, and then found the clothesline that Hordrick mentioned, but I didn't have the material to repair it. So I continued south and found the trash he mentioned as well. It was Hordrick's outhouse door with some drunk ramblings written on it by Uric. I stopped home and then came back with the materials to repair the clothesline, and then spent way longer than I cared to admit to find the final barrel to repair, just for it to literally be on top of the first one that I repaired earlier. I don't feel stupid at all. I went back to Hordrick and he let me know that I cleaned up everything, but to go see Tress about some business. I headed up there quickly since it was getting pretty late and shit, this is Corey's, not Tress's house. I ran east and wait, don't I have a quest with Shepard as well? I stopped to talk to Shepard about the order of the wait, what the hell do you mean prepare for battle? No, I gotta go talk to Tress before it's... God damn it, we're in the dungeon now. Thanks to Shepard permanently cosplaying as a pirate, the one-legged ghost was starting to trust us. Shut up, Shepard, don't ruin this! And no thanks to Shepard, I took back control over the conversation and managed to convince the ghost to tell me about the roped woman. The ghost also asked us to help him get his leg back, which was in a place called the Misty Quagmire. Shepard had heard of it before, and then told me a story of Marquis Teodoro Sr., which is our Teodoro's dad. Sr. had found the Necronomicon at the Misty Quagmire, and the book had driven both him and his wife mad. Shepard then left to go deeper into the dungeon to go look for the Vampire Queen, and then my character thought to himself that I should ask both Teodoro and Clotho about the Misty Quagmire. And then I headed out to go see if I could make it back to Tress before it was too late. Somehow he was still awake, so I asked him about the business. He just wanted to thank me for fixing up the village after Yurik's drunken rampage, and rewarded me with a spicy orange? Is this a house decoration? I went back home and checked the blueprint board in my house and... Wait, I've literally never interacted with this? There's actually a bunch of really cool stuff. Why did I never look at this before? Oh hey, here's the spicy orange. It was a wallpaper. Donkey's been hauling ass. Get it? Because he's a donkey. Anyways, pretty sure with how fast these bodies are coming in that Donkey's killing them himself. But because of that, on day 167, I had a couple bodies that I need to deal with again. Getting the bodies prepped to bury and crafting the grave decorations took a lot of the afternoon. So I had to rush over to Witch Hill to follow up with Inquisitor about the Dark Organs. Oh, screw you, Donkey. I literally just finished dealing with the last two bodies. I ignored Donkey for now and got over to Witch Hill before it was too late. Unfortunately, the Dark Organs weren't enough evidence for the king, so Inquisitor begged me for help getting more proof. I offered to give him Jerry, but we thought it through and it wouldn't work because Jerry's petty and he would have just pretended to be a normal skull when he was in front of the king. But it got me the achievement for betraying him. And for the rest of the night, I decided to knock out the new body that Donkey dropped off just to get it out of the way. Getting the body ready to be buried took longer than expected, so while I was waiting on some injections, I used some sin shards to make a 3 white skull flesh on day 168 and upgraded my zombie on the decomposer with it. Afterwards, I went down to Smiler, who had some new dialogue for me. My character wanted to do something nice for him now that we finished helping Yurik, although Smiler didn't really seem to particularly care, which we'll need to talk to Snake about. But Snake's not in town today. However, Astrologer is. So I grabbed my Silver Star book from last week and brought it over to the lighthouse. He took it and told me he would let me know the results next week. I bought my weekly tech books and more writing supplies as well, and used the tech books to pick up martial skills and the Swordmaster technologies. I also grabbed printing press, but I had my recording paused like an idiot, so I missed it. Also, I betrayed my own commitment to never fish because of my need to achievement hunt, and bought the best fishing pole and 3 of the best lures that Lighthouse Keeper had to offer. Afterwards, I headed over to check if the refugee camp's happiness was back up, which it was, so I got the campfire upgraded. And then I went back down to the dungeon. However, I went down there purposely unprepared because I also found out that there's an achievement for dying 10 times, so yeah, I'm just gonna go till I die. I ended up making it through a lot of floor 9, but I died before I could fully clear the floor right before the end of the day. When I went to go perform my sermon on day 169, I found out that I can put all the charged sin shards in the big stained glass window of the church. I finally decided to keep my end of the bargain with Miller and hosted a comedy event at the Talking Skull. It couldn't be any worse than Lighthouse Keeper's show, or maybe it can. And then I grabbed some of my surplus wine before leaving and headed back home to go for another round in the dungeon. I cleared through floor 10 by the time it hit day 170, and continued clearing up through floor 12 before I got the sleepy debuff and headed out to take a nap. When I woke up, I decided to go follow up with Clotho and Teodoro about the Misty Quagmire. I went to Clotho's first, and I think I might have sparked a PTSD reaction with her, and she went on a rant about how that place was cursed. She even forgot I was there when she finally snapped out of it, so I probably shouldn't push the subject any further. So instead, I went to go ask Teodoro about it, who wouldn't help me until the camp upgrades were finished. Got it. I got prepped and headed into the dungeon again with the intention of getting to floor 15 and getting the golden apple before Snake leaves tomorrow. But the game had other plans for me. I got the sleepy debuff towards the end of floor 13, so I headed outside, dumped my loot, and took a quick nap before heading back in to finish. I made it to floor 15 right at the start of day 172, and it was a race to finish the floor and get to the golden apple before Snake left, but I pulled it off and brought the apple out to Snake. Snake let me take a lick from the apple as well, which gave me a ton of blue tech points, and then he told me that he knew the secret to the ritual. He would need a dark heart. Conveniently, I have a dark heart in the morgue. I grabbed the heart and brought it back. But before anything janky happens, I have a couple other quests to follow up on now that I'm at 90 friendship with Snake. I first asked him about the Keeper's book for Smiler, which he told me the story of when he was attempting to sell it, but something jumped out during the sale and stole the book. Of course, it was Jerry stealing it for booze money. I'll ask him about that later. I then asked him again about stealing the amulet of the ancient god from Lighthouse Keeper. He'll do it now, but in exchange, I'll have to host a rat race at the Talking Skull in order to draw the attention of the Inquisitors for the cultists to grab and drown. Sure, I guess? I guess I'll be getting an influx of bodies here pretty soon. Snake went to go gather his followers for the ritual, and Jerry appeared while he was gone. He seemed to know what Snake actually wanted to summon, since he's been pretending to be his inner voice this entire time. Snake began the ritual in order to summon his... father? Out of nowhere, Inquisitor appeared, and I don't think he could have summoned a worse person. Wait, he's actually your father? And your name's Seth? Well, that was quite the bombshell. But despite how opposite those two are, they were just happy to be reunited, and both of them gave me their pieces to open the portal on Witch Hill. 4 down, and 2 to go. And with that finish, I headed up to the refugee camp to upgrade the storehouse and drop off some food, and then I went over to Witch Hill to go proc the quest to remove the guards from watching the portal overnight, which I needed to do before Inquisitor comes by tomorrow. I stocked up on some sticks while I was waiting for Inquisitor to show up on day 173, and when he finally got here, I brought up the overnight guards. I asked him to let me guard Witch Hill instead, which he accepted, and got me my final 10 points of friendship with him, which also got me the achievement for maxing out his friendship. Afterwards, I went home to deal with the corpse pileup in my morgue. Damn it, Donkey. But it did remind me to talk to Jerry about the lost page of the Keeper's diary. He couldn't remember, so I just decided to check around the crate that he sits on, and of course it's here. Let's go show it to Smiler. It turned out that Smiler is actually the disembodied soul of a mentally ill 18-year-old that the previous Keeper was attempting to help. But by this point, he was so detached from his old body that he's practically a different person. Smiler wasn't upset about it though, he actually took it pretty well, and for his final wish he wanted me to depart his soul since eventually I'd be leaving and he would just be alone with Jerry watching him drink for eternity. I definitely see your point there, Smiler. We went over to the soul portal and Jerry even showed up to say his tearful goodbyes. Okay, rude Jerry, come on. Finally, I sent Smiler off through the soul portal, actually completing the Better Call Saul DLC this time. I think. I confronted Jerry on day 174 about the stupid amulet he had me make. He laughed, but I couldn't argue that it got the spirit to spawn. You're still a dick though, Jerry. And once again, I spent a large portion of my morning catching up on the ever-growing pile of bodies in the morgue. But eventually it got to about midday, so I stopped and headed over to the lighthouse. I followed up with the astrologer about the expedition to save Wagner, but instead of an expedition, the Academy just wanted a sequel to my last book. But this time, they wanted a gold quality one. I grabbed this week's tech books and loaded up on more writing supplies, and then used those tech points to pick up the complex printing press and the random text generator technologies, which finished off the entire writing tree. And I still have a fair bit of points left, so I went over to the smithing tree and also picked up the rules of burning, jeweler, and precious little things text as well. And before the end of the day, I went back over to the refugee camp to go build the tent, but it was too late in the day to turn the quest into Teodoro, so I'll have to come back later. On day 175, I wanted to get started on writing the book for Astrologer, so I went down to the church basement to build a random text generator and the printing press. But there wasn't enough space. So for now, I just got the random text generator built and took a look at what it can make. It looks like it can make stories and random tech books. Neat. The stories will definitely help, and thanks to all the dungeon runs, I have a ton of Batwings to make the paper. I also checked out what it would take to make the best book covers, which uses jewelry details. Good thing I just picked up the jewelry tech. And after performing today's sermon, I headed back over to the refugee camp to turn in the quest to Teodoro, which, once again, he just demanded more from me before he would help me, which frankly I'm getting pretty sick of. Even Snake wasn't this greedy. This time Teodoro wants me to build him his own workbench and another tent. I went home and checked out the jewelry table and... oh god, it uses faith? Okay, maybe I'll just buy the jewelry details from Merchant then. I spent most of day 176 crafting paper for the random text generator and doing some alchemy to work towards the achievement for crafting 20 different alchemy recipes, which of course I had my damn recording paused for when I actually got the achievement. But in my defense, I had actually counted the amount of recipes that were on the zombie alchemy workbench before I started, and I only saw 15, so I'm not sure where the other 5 came from. I made rounds in town on day 177, first stopping at the Talking Skull to collect my profits and check out what I would need to build the rat race table. And then I headed over to the Graveyard Veggies warehouse to pick up those profits as well, and then bought out all of 5 of Merchant's jewelry details. And for the rest of the day, I just got caught up on all sorts of farm chores. Nothing notable, however, I did upgrade the desk to desk 2 in the church basement, which doesn't look like it improved anything at all. On day 178, I finished crafting the paper that I was working on a couple days ago. Not really sure why that particular recipe crafts so slow. But then I crafted my first few gold quality hardcovers and checked out what the chances of getting a gold quality book were. 70%. I don't really like those odds. But I can raise them by getting both the Jeweler and Industrious perks. I was able to pick up the Gems tech, but I was just a little bit short on getting Jeweler. But I have a few ways I can get the last few tech points that I need. I tried to get some of those tech points by making some soft covers, only to discover that they only give red tech points. Okay, what about hardcovers? Oh god, they use Tanning Agent and Faith. Okay, never mind. I'm just gonna go craft grave decorations. I needed to make some anyways. But before I went to go work on that, I headed over to the Talking Skull and... damn it, I didn't bring enough materials with me. I built one of the barrels, but I was short on materials to build the second one and the rat race table. I went home to pick up the materials and crafted some grave decorations while I was waiting on my teleport cooldown. And once the cooldown was back up, I went back to the Talking Skull and got the rat race table built, unlocking the rat race event, and then got the final barrel built. But I forgot to bring flyers with me, so no rat race event quite yet. I noticed on day 179 that my random text generator zombie was absurdly slow, so I took a lot of the afternoon upgrading some organs to increase his efficiency a bit. And then I went to go craft some flyers to host the rat race, plus they gave me more blue tech points to get the best friends perk. I went back to the Talking Skull to hold the rat race, and everything went off without a hitch. So once Snake is back, I can go get the Amulet of the Ancient God. And on my way home, I stopped to gather a few more sticks to craft some chisels for making grave decorations and... God damn it, Donkey, stop! You're the reason why I have to keep gathering so many sticks. I finally collected 150 blue tech points and picked up the best friends perk on day 180, so I went back down to the church basement to go check out the gold quality book again. Using a gold quality book cover and gold quality notes, I had a 100% chance to make the gold quality book, which I crafted and... ooh, that's some nice blue tech points. I headed over to the lighthouse and turned the book into Astrologer, which got me the bestseller achievement, but I'll have to wait another week to get an update about the expedition. Afterwards, I headed up to the Mooch camp and upgraded the cooking table, and recruited a new refugee. I went to go inform the cook about her table upgrade and... Are you serious? You want beehives now? Good lord, you people are never satisfied. And since I would be getting the Amulet of the Ancient God soon, I finally took the time to go find the Ancient Shackles and... oh, that was easy. Okay then. I checked through the NPC log on day 181 and... I have no quests that I can actively work on. So I decided to start achievement hunting. I wasn't looking forward to the fishing achievements, especially the 200 fish caught one. But I went down to the waterfall and fished for a bit, and man, I hate this fishing game. It's like Stardew's, but so much more chaotic. But I did at least discover that time doesn't pass while fishing, which would have been really useful early in the game, but kind of a moot point now though. I switched locations again to ocean fishing, and after a few casts I got the achievement for catching 6 different species of fish. On the next cast after that, I also caught a giant goldfish, which there was another achievement for. I continued fishing for a little bit longer, but I was getting mind-numbingly bored, so I stopped for now. On day 182, I cooked up some of the fish I caught into fish sticks, which I ate to get the Taste Like Home achievement. And it also got me some progress on the cook achievement for cooking 20 different recipes. And then I spent the rest of the day cooking up different types of recipes with all the ingredients I had on hand, which wasn't a lot, but I was able to cook up a few fish, pumpkin, and carrot-based recipes. I started running out of ingredients on day 183, so I headed over to Farmer's to buy some beets and cabbage to make a few more and... wait, why is he not out yet? You lazy shit, I've never met a farmer that sleeps in this long. I queued up some cooking when I got back, and then headed out to the refugee camp. I was hoping I'd be back at 8 happiness by now, but I was just a little bit short. So I dropped off some of the foods that I've been cooking and started growing some wheat. Oh hey, and the happiness just ticked up too, so I was able to build Teodoro's workshop. I got a little bored of cooking on day 184, so I went back to fishing. This time, I wanted to try out the swamp, except I can't find the fishing spot. Oh, finally, there it is. I forgot to bring a lure with me though, so I was only able to catch eels. But it turns out, the eels are super easy to catch, so this might be a good spot to try to grind out the 200 catch achievement. I didn't stick around for too long though, because Snake was back today, so I went to go pick up the amulet of the ancient god from him. And with both artifacts on hand, I went back over to the Talking Skull to go check out the memories. The first memory was from the amulet, which showed Horadric saving Dig, and Clotho questioning Horadric's motives, which got rudely interrupted by Donkey dropping off a body, and also getting my cook achievement. Horadric stated his reason was for his love of Miss Chain. Bella then let him know that Chain was captured and was about to be executed, and Horadric left to go save her. Clotho then asked Dig about the golden apples that she had asked him to hide. He was able to hide 3 of them, but had to eat 2 of them as well. Dig was bleeding out, which they couldn't let happen due to the wisdom that he had gained from eating the golden apples, so Clotho told him to write the Necronomicon and then she would heal him. The next memory of the shackles followed Horadric in his attempt to rescue Miss Chain. Creswell sent away the guards to speak to Horadric alone, stating that he knew that he had saved Dig, and if he tried to save Chain as well, that he would be deemed a traitor. Horadric wasn't having any of it, saying if he was truly a brother then he would have helped him save Chain, and then left to go try to free her. And after the memory was over, I returned home and tended to my vineyard for the first time in a while. I need a lot more hops for some achievements for throwing the best parties at the Talking Skull, which require you to give Yorick specific foods and alcohols to sell at the event. Which, speaking of those foods, onion rings is one of them, and I'll need a lot of them. So on day 185, I went to the Dead Horse to go buy out Horadric's stock of them. I would also need a lot of burgers for the events, so I went back home and started cooking up some meat. Which I also needed onions for those burgers, so I got my onion farm back up and running. I then went and gutted a few bodies for their juicy flesh and went back to cooking again. And before the end of the day, I went up to the apiary to go let the bats kill me for the 10 deaths achievement, and really, they despawned when I was 1 hit from death. I continued my cooking on the morning of day 186 until it was late enough in the day to go visit Astrologer. The second book I wrote was enough to get his status restored, plus a promotion. The expedition was also approved, but he would need an aristocrat to join him. Good thing I'm already an aristocrat, I just gotta go home and get my papers. I picked up my papers and then we headed out. We got into the northern pass and found Wagner pretty quickly, but then we got stopped by the Lord Commander himself. Term and Astrologer both tried to plead their cases to him, while Wagner tried to prove that he was his son. And meanwhile, I just tried to betray all 3 of them in order to stay alive. But the Lord Commander was having none of it, and as a final goodbye, Miss Charm gave Wagner a kiss, which, like a fairy tale, transformed Wagner back into a human. The Lord Commander finally recognized him, so Wagner bargained to become a knight like the Lord Commander always wanted from him in order to let the 3 of us go. Miss Charm and Astrologer were so happy that I reunited their family that they gave me the necklace and the golden angle. Finally, I have all 6 pieces to open up the portal on Witch Hill. It's been a long road to get here. Oh yeah, I still need to pick up my tech books and... Astrologer's gone. Rude. And to end off the day, I headed back up to the apiary to let the bats beat me up for my lunch money. I got more alchemy going on day 187, getting 20 more health potions queued up on the zombie alchemist, and got some candles crafted for today's sermon. But before the sermon, I made a trip to town, buying out Horadric's onion rings, wax and bees from Beekeeper, and all the cheese from Rosa. I then went home and performed a candle-lit sermon, which got me an extra 7 faith for the week. I then prepared some flyers to go work on the event achievements at the Talking Skull, and then finally went back to the apiary to get beat up by bats again, getting me my 10 deaths for the Mac player achievement. I headed up to the refugee camp on day 188 to try to build the tent, but I was just a couple 6 short. But hey, another quest. Yeah, I'll get your tools, but stay away from me after that. I took a look around, but I couldn't find any dead brush, so I finally had to stop being stubborn and crafted myself a new axe after giving mine away to Woodcutter forever ago. And after chopping down a bush for the sticks, I went back up to the camp and got the tent built, which now Teodoro won't help me until I get 11 people in the camp. I hate you, Teodoro, so much. You renege on every single promise at every single turn. I guess I'll need to come back once the happiness comes back. On day 189, I went to go look for the last set of artifacts. The first of which was on Witch Hill, which was pretty easy to find. The other of which was at Adam's house, and it doesn't say anything about talking to him about it though, so can I just break in? Damn, nope. Need 40 friendship. I'll come back later in the day. I went back home and picked up my health potions and started crafting some speed potions, and I was also able to get my healthcare achievement off of this batch of potions. I then went back to Adams and tried to convince him to let me inside to see the vases. He was skeptical, and asked me to return with 3 high quality vases to prove that I was actually an art connoisseur, because apparently, I can't like art without owning it. I picked up the ceramic firing tech to craft them, and where the hell do I even make these? It's not at the cooking table, not at the potter's wheel. Oh, okay, it's at the furnace. So I collected a little bit of clay and processed some white powder that I would need for the porcelain to end the day, in which I got the vases crafting on day 190. And while those were cooking up, I went to go do some inventory management and discovered I already had a bunch of porcelain pitchers in the graveyard trunk that I ditched forever ago. So I went back to Adam and he wasn't impressed, but he offered me 5 silver to buy them off me so he could smash them. Okay, well that's a little uncalled for. Merchant could help me get some nicer ones, but I'll have to wait till he's back in town. I went back up to the refugee camp and recruited the last 2 refugees to finish Teodoro's quest, and finally, this was enough for him to finally appreciate my help, which he rewarded me with some money, some statues, and a universal bag. Where the hell has this been the whole game? God damn, I should have worked on the camp sooner. Inventory management has been such a struggle the entire game, so it really sucks that I'm only getting this on day 190. Teodoro also agreed to take me to the Misty Quagmire as well. There was a few memories that I checked out with the Witcher's Eye about the hooded woman performing a ritual on the ghost from the dungeon. Eventually, it was discovered that somebody was eavesdropping on them, and the robed woman sent the vampires to attack. But when she approached and saw who it was, she ended up burning all 6 vampires alive. I dug up both the ghost's missing leg and a burnt shoe from one of the killed vampires, and as I was preparing to leave, Teodoro got possessed by the spirit of the Misty Quagmire, who wanted revenge for mankind's sins. I managed to trick the spirit with a futuristic scientific question, in which the stakes were let us leave if she couldn't answer within 3 seconds. The spirit somehow upheld the deal and released Teodoro, and we booked it out of there. But upon getting back to the swamp, we were attacked by a golem. Nature is pissed. I took out the golem and then went over to Klothos to go pick up more memory powder for the burned shoe. I then went back down to floor 8 of the dungeon to return the ghost's leg. He was appreciative? And before the day was over, I went over to Kukul to ask him about the ancient pickaxe. He wouldn't sell it to me unless I found him a witch that could fix his hump and make him look like a normal human. So I guess I'll be going back to Klothos tomorrow. I got a few memory tinctures crafted on day 191, which I used to mace myself in the face, which revealed a memory of a few masked vampires all speaking to another one named Carl about how his plan was foolish and that the robed woman was waiting for them. Carl wanted to leave her employ and buy a used post office that uses donkeys. Interesting. I'll have to ask Donkey about that. Afterwards, I went back up to Clotho to ask for help with Kukul, and thanks to my stunning good looks, she decided to help me for free, giving me a spell scroll to use on him. She mentioned it required a dark organ, but Kukul should already have one. Donkey showed up right as I got home, so I stopped him and asked him about the capitalist bastard who owned the post office. I told him that I needed to see him urgently so I could lecture him on the evils of capitalism. Donkey said he would get him down here as soon as possible. I went back to Kukul later in the day, but he didn't have a dark organ on him and told me to come back tomorrow. And after that, I went south to go check out the pond nearby, catching my 10th fish species to get the fish collector achievement, and while I was reeling it in, Donkey's bell chimed, so I believe Carl might be waiting at my house. But when I got home on day 192, there was no Donkey or Carl to be found. The hell? I went up to the refugee camp to go dump some food and got the beehive built for the cook. When I turned in the quest, I reached 100 friendship with her and got the raccoon thyroid stew achievement, several recipes, and it also opened up trading with her to buy even more recipes. I then went to the lighthouse and noticed that astrologer now seems to have a better outlook on life. That's nice to see. I bought my tech books and a few pen and inks for flyers. I also got tired of buying onion rings from Horadric, so I looked up how to get the recipe for myself. You need to talk to Horadric with a bronze quality onion in your inventory to get it. How would anybody have found that on their own? I got the recipe and then headed home after hearing another bell jingle from Donkey. Still no one here though. Oh. Wait, he's tied up inside of the morgue. What the hell, Donkey? I didn't mean to kidnap him. Oh well, what's done is done. Should be easy enough to interrogate him. Oh. Well, never mind. Shepard can help though. I'll go get him later. I went back to Kukul later in the evening to cast the spell, which didn't work. Well, it did, but it just made him see everybody else as a hunchback rather than actually fixing his. But my dumbass spoiled the illusion, so I just offered him free booze at the Talking Skull. He agreed, but said my tavern needs to be up to his standards. Awfully picky for someone who's not even allowed into the other bar in town. I went over to Shepard's afterwards to ask him to interrogate Carl, and he was delighted to be my mentor. Wait, no, that's not what I want. Well, at least my first lesson's to interrogate a vampire, so... Wait, why the hell am I the one eating the garlic? We tortured Carl with garlic breath and bad singing until he finally talked. The robed woman was a powerful magician, but not a vampire queen. And the ritual performed at the Misty Quagmire was performed in order to kill the fourth keeper, which is what caused the Great Blast. He also mentioned that there was a spy with red hair who survived, so off to the Dead Horse to go talk to Miss Chain. Miss Chain was pretty defensive when I first tried talking to her, so I assumed she's the spy, but she got mad at me and I had to apologize. The apology was starting off good, and I was explaining that I was just trying to prevent the ancient curse, but she still wouldn't talk. She did let slip though that if she talked that her sister would be killed, so it strongly implied that Clotho might be the robed mage, and then she ran off. I asked Horadric where she might have run off to, and he suggested that she probably went over to the coast, so I followed her. And when I got there, Miss Chain admitted everything. Clotho was indeed the robed mage who went crazy and tried to destroy the world, and she didn't even recognize Chain at the Misty Quagmire when she had ordered the vampires to kill her. She only realized it when she got closer and got emotional and killed the vampires. She then tried to commit Sudoku herself, but it failed and caused her to lose her memory. The only reason that Chain survived was due to the Misty Quagmire enhancing her magic power as well. So I guess I'll need to go speak to Clotho about all this. I was on my way over to the Talking Skull to go pick up some wine for stamina food on day 193 when I got the chef achievement from some onion rings that I had queued up earlier. I knocked out today's sermon and started prepping for a rager at the Talking Skull, which got me the best party achievement, and even better, the guide that I had looked up for this was wrong and I still had 90 wine left over, so I can reuse that for the best concert achievement once I get back up to 3 reputation. Which, the reputation literally restored right in front of my eyes. So I just need to go make some pasta and then I can do the event. I cleaned up the left side of the graveyard on day 194 while I was waiting for the pasta to cook, and then I went back to go host the concert, which got me the best concert achievement. And afterwards I went back over to Clotho to talk to her about what Miss Chain had said the other day, and... Wait, there's no new dialogue. Did the game not tell me to go talk to her the other day? Yeah, it did. What the hell? I switched gears on day 195 and started working on the 3k blue tech point achievement, spamming out a bunch of grave decorations for points. And once it had gotten late enough in the morning, I went over to Merchant to go ask him about the vases for Adam. He had just sold them to Beekeeper. So I went over to Beekeeper and first bought out his wax, and then asked him about the vases. Beekeeper had bought them because he knew that Adam had wanted them, and supposedly he had discovered that Adam was his arch nemesis, Hornet Man. I played along with him and told him to give Adam the vases with poison honey to defeat him, but it turns out that my best buddy Dig had stolen Beekeeper's hypertoxic bee honey, so I'll have to go talk to Dig. Dig had used the poison honey to bake a cake as part of his holiday, and gave me a riddle to solve with the prize being the cake. I told him that I would share the cake with Beekeeper, and he warned me that Beekeeper might be crazy. Pot, meet kettle. Although, he is right. I brought the cake over to Beekeeper, and he mixed the cake into some honey, and then put the honey into the vases for me to bring to Adam. I brought the vases over, and sadly warned Adam about the honey inside. Damn it. He appreciated the vases though, and let me into his house, where I got both the ancient cell key, and also liberated all the food from his home. Once it had gotten a little bit later in the day, I went back over to Kukul because I figured I had my tavern fully upgraded already, but he didn't have anything new for me, So I went over to the Talking Skull to discover that there was now Tavern Table 2s. Okay, I can do that. Which I did on day 196. I spent an enormous amount of time chopping planks and then went back over to the Talking Skull and... Can you guys move, please? But I got the 4 tables upgraded and got the bar up to 75 quality. I went home and took a short nap while I was waiting to see Kukul again, but when I woke up, there was guards at my home waiting to arrest me. I was brought to the mountain fort where Kukul, the Lord Commander, and Beatrice were waiting. They accused me and Hordrick of aiding the refugees, and the sentence was being burned to death. But don't worry, we could appeal it after the fact. Hey, wait a minute. Hordrick saved the day though, and hit the Lord Commander back with some technical legal loophole, which they couldn't refute, so they had to let us go. However, the Lord Commander did warn us that they were going to go after the refugee camp, so I'll need to go warn Teodoro. Teodoro decided that he would stand up to the mountain fort soldiers, and asked for my help providing fortifications to the camp and providing weapons to the refugees. You want 24 sticks? Oh, do I have to? I'm leaving this world in a few days anyways. Fine. I got the sticks from the small trees around the camp, and then headed back over to the backstabbing Kukul to tell him that I had made the improvements to the Talking Skull, and he gave me the ancient pickaxe, which I immediately went back to the Talking Skull with to go check them out. The memory of the pickaxe was 2 years after the last memory, where the religion of the ancient god had been completely eliminated. Lucius and Jove had brought a crowd over to the Bridge of the Dead and destroyed it, being symbolic of the last relic of the ancient god's religion, which also stopped the dead from passing through. I then checked out the memory of the ancient cell keys, which showed Hordrick in prison. Lucius came to inform him about his execution the following day, but offered him a chance to become his bishop and avoid the death penalty. Hordrick refused the offer. Creswell then came by later to reason with him, but Hordrick had made up his mind, and nothing Creswell could say would change it. Once the memories were over, I put the 2 relics in the cabinet, but this time I was not prompted to find any more artifacts. I went back to Jerry on day 197 to see if I had missed anything, and he had a whole list of items for me to bring him. Why was none of this prompted when I was here yesterday? I had the clay pot of tar on me though, so I gave it to him and started up another memory. The memory was of Hordrick's execution. King Jove was there, trying to pass laws to gaslight people into believing that the zombies weren't their fault from destroying the Bridge of the Dead, so he made it illegal to say so. At this point, Creswell finally spoke up. Creswell said that he was a witness to Master being summoned from the portal on Witch Hill, and that he didn't actually descend from heaven. And not only that, but Master was actually against religion. King Jove then ordered the guards to seize Creswald, which Creswald then flashbanged the crowd and saved Hordrick. After the memory ended, Jerry commented on how the original King Jove was killed and beheaded, and that his head was buried separately from his body, perhaps even in a certain gravekeeper's backyard. Who knows? Jerry then gave me the next 2 artifacts to get, the Priest's Ring and the Priest's Signet Ring. Also, for some reason, he didn't care about the sulfur statue or golden anymore, so I have no idea what that was all about. After the memories were over, I left and went to the refugee camp and got the stakes built. Now Teodoro wants a rack of swords to arm the refugees. My character was seemingly too lazy to make them himself, so he suggested buying them from Kukul. I'll go check that out later. I then went to go see Dig about the Priest's Signet Ring. He told me that he would trade it to me for a racing rat from Lighthouse Keeper so he could perform at the events at the Talking Skull. So I went over to Lighthouse Keeper to find that someone had stolen his rats. However, he did inform me that Kukul sold racing rats, so now I have 2 reasons to go see him later. For now, I switched over to getting the Priestess Ring from Farmer, who told me to fuck off. So I went to talk to his son, who... yeah, I should have figured he would have been useless. Okay, let's try Miller instead. Who's now sending me to Clotho? God damn it. I got to Clotho's before it was too late, and in exchange for a compliment, she told me all about Farmer's wife, Bella. Bella was Clotho's other sister, and despite being immortal, had used up too much of her magic helping other people, which ended up killing her. That's terrible and all, but I just want her ring. I guess I'll go back to Farmer now. Farmer was still up as well, so I tried to sympathize with him about Bella. He opened up to me a little bit, and even began crying, explaining that she used the last of her power to give birth to their daughter. She really was a good woman. Afterwards, I followed up with him about the ring. He told me that there was actually 2 rings, one that she was buried with, and then one that she had left him. I bought the one that she left him for a gold, since, you know, fuck you money. which he then told me that the gold was going to be used to fulfill her wish and send his son to university, which, knowing his son, seems like a complete waste. I then went to Kukul and asked about the rats. He told me about him working with somebody named Piper who steals the rats and then sells them in town. The Gypsy Baron had bought one of them, so I went to go talk with him. Gypsy Baron was a little reluctant at first, but he did end up selling me the rat for a gold. I then went back over to Kukul to check for the Rack of Swords quest, but there was no option for that either. Why does the game keep telling me to go do things that aren't actually quests? I spammed out more grave decorations on day 198 for the 3k blue tech points achievement until it was late enough in the day to go pick up my weekly books from Astrologer. On my way out to the lighthouse, I stopped by Dig to give him the rat in exchange for the signet ring, which he also led on to the fact that maybe he isn't so crazy after all, and it was all a facade because the only way a wise man can survive is by pretending to be a psycho. I brought the ring over to Jerry and entered the memory. It brought me to the Misty Quagmire, where Bella was trying to stop Clotho from performing a ritual that would kill 1,000 people. Clotho wouldn't listen though, and was upset that the village had betrayed the ancient god. However, the ritual actually ended up summoning the ancient god, because Dig had tricked Clotho into performing the wrong ritual, which gave him a chance to speak to the ancient god. Dig pleaded to the ancient god for help, but the ancient god wasn't having it, and then the memory cuts out. I then entered the memory of the priestess ring, which brought me back to the signing of the ancient contract. All 6 of the people attending would also become immortal as long as the contract was upheld. There was one last memory to check out, a brick from the church. That should be easy enough to get, I hope. It was, and I brought back the brick to the Talking Skull and entered the memory of the villagers building the church. Bordrick then went to thank Chain because it was her magic stone which caused the flashbang during his execution, which allowed Creswell to save him. Miss Shane was still a bit conflicted though, and didn't accept his thanks. When I got out of the memory, Jerry was upset that throughout all of these memories, he had not been mentioned a single time, and he finally stopped with all the hinting and flat out mentioned that he was Jove. He wanted to see what happened with him, so we loaded him up into the machine next. The memory of Jerry's skull was of him and Lucius at the bath, waiting on Master to arrive. They were talking pretty cryptically though, but it seemed like they had betrayed Master. Master then came to confront them, but they set a trap to have him killed. When we got out of the memory, Jerry admitted that he was actually relieved that he no longer had those memories, but he did remember that him and Lucius had buried some treasure nearby in case of a rebellion, and that I should go dig it up. I found the chest just north of the Talking Skull, and it contained some wine and gold. Jerry took and wouldn't share the wine, but he did let me keep the measly 10 gold. Man, you guys were broke. This wouldn't have even bought aristocrat papers. I spent all of day 199 cooking up onion rings and spamming out books in an attempt to record my time here in this world, and definitely not just trying to get the 3k blue tech point achievement before I leave tomorrow. I also performed the final sermon of my playthrough, and then continued cooking and crafting for the rest of the day. And finally, day 200 has come. But I'm not quite ready to leave yet. I have a plan. I'm not really all that good with goodbyes, so I headed over to the Talking Skull and threw the best damn rat race this town has ever seen, getting me the best race achievement. And with all the drunkards hopefully passed out with a pending hangover when they wake up, I snuck over to Witch Hill. And as I built the laser to activate the portal, nothing happened. But Jerry did come by to wish me off. I guess it makes sense that a skull wouldn't have been passed out drunk after my party. But slowly after Jerry arrived, the rest of the 6 key holders started showing up to wish me off, which lit up the runes on the portal and finally activated it. But I wasn't sent home, and instead, my wife from the future appeared. We went back over to the Talking Skull and put her handkerchief into the artifact machine so she could show me what happened on that fateful day 200 days ago when I disappeared. It replayed the intro of the game, but with a twist. I'd actually been split into 2 souls, one which was sent to the town, and the other which was me, who was sent off to go become a graveyard keeper. After playing through this second 100 days and beating the game, all I can think is, man, what an awesome game. There's just an absurd amount of content to the point you'll never get bored. Honestly, overwhelmed at points even. Not to mention the hilarious writing for the NPCs and storyline and just absurd situations. There's really a never dull moment in this game. I'll be honest though, the ending of the game seemed a little bit vague and didn't really answer a whole lot of questions, but I'm gonna remain hopeful and hope that was intentional. I hope it opens up the opportunity for a sequel based on the copy of the character being sent to the town. So if you're still here at this point, thank you so much for sticking around. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.